Deep in the freezing eastern mountains, as far as the eye could see, everything was buried under a thick, endless blanket of snow. Our main character stood there, rubbing his hands together to warm his freezing nose, thinking to himself that if he didn't desperately need the military pay, there was no way in hell he'd ever come to this frozen wasteland just to fight a dragon. Surrounded by the stench of death, with screams and the clashing of steel echoing in his ears, he carefully sized up the battlefield. On one side stood an army of magical beasts, dominating both land and sky. On the other, a human army equipped with nothing but basic, crude armor. They were just mercenaries risking their lives for a quick paycheck, and anyone could see they were hopelessly outmatched. If things kept going like this, he probably wouldn't survive long enough to see a single dime. Just as panic began to spread through the ranks, a voice suddenly rang out. "Don't panic. A powerful enemy doesn't guarantee our defeat. But if we run now, we've already lost." The moment the red-haired girl finished speaking, a massive fireball conjured by her mind shot straight at the dragon, triggering a massive, earth-shaking explosion. Her name is Charlotte, one of the 4 legendary archmages of the Fram Empire, famously known as the Flame Witch. And right now, she was leading the charge against the ice dragon, Scott Walker. That devastating blow served as the signal for the entire army to charge. With Charlotte leading the way, the soldiers' spirits flared back to life. Roaring with renewed courage, they gripped their weapons and charged forward. The fire magic was incredibly destructive, but as the thick smoke cleared, the ice dragon emerged once again, completely unscathed. The entire army froze in shock, unable to believe their eyes. Even Charlotte was completely stunned. Her previous attack, Lava Bomb, was one of the most advanced fire spells in existence, yet it hadn't even scratched the dragon's impenetrable scales. The dragon let out a deafening roar, opening its massive jaws to exhale a wave of absolute zero, instantly whipping up a violent blizzard. The temperature plummeted in a split second, bone-chillingly cold. Before most of the soldiers could even react, they were frozen solid into blocks of ice. With a casual flick of its tail, the dragon shattered them into a million pieces. Facing overwhelming odds, Charlotte knew the burden of defeating the dragon rested solely on her shoulders. Leaping from the cliff, she unsheathed the crimson flame sword and charged the beast head-on, her determination blazing hotter than ever. She brought her sword down with a fierce strike, but the dragon casually blocked it with its tail. The crimson flame sword spun out of control and flew right out of Charlotte's grip. Refusing to back down, she leaped backward and chanted a spell, summoning a massive magic circle of pure fire. The snowy field instantly lit up in a fiery red glow as countless giant blazing swords materialized, raining down upon the beast. But Scott Walker, the ultimate ice dragon, wasn't going to be taken down so easily. Opening its maw, it unleashed a devastating blast of concentrated ice energy containing its full power. Ice and fire collided, but the gap in their power was simply too vast from the start. Charlotte's giant blazing swords looked like mere embers in comparison, instantly snuffed out by the dragon's freezing blast. Staring in horror at the devastating force heading straight for her, Charlotte let out a desperate scream before her voice and body were swallowed by the blinding snow. After blasting her away, the dragon's icy beam kept going, obliterating several mountain peaks in its path. If one of the 4 legendary archmages couldn't even survive a single blow, then starving mercenaries who only joined for the money didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. Their chances of winning plummeted straight to zero. The few surviving soldiers threw down their weapons in terror, scrambling to escape as fast as their legs could carry them. They treated the battlefield like a playground, arriving in droves, only to leave one person behind. Charlotte looked around helplessly at the desolate ruins and discarded weapons. She was now completely alone against a horde of monsters, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She struggled to her feet, gritting her teeth in absolute refusal to accept defeat. Right then, a voice echoed in her ear. "Why aren't you running? This is clearly a battle you can't win." Charlotte whipped her head around, shocked to find someone had actually stayed behind. Standing there was a young man who casually introduced himself as someone about to go on a date with a terribly reckless girl and a mountain of gold. His words were utterly ridiculous, dripping with sarcasm. But then, his tone shifted. He demanded that she answer his question. Charlotte's expression hardened. She firmly replied that running away wasn't in her vocabulary, not now, and certainly not ever. The two of them kept bickering, completely oblivious to the fact that the massive beast was already closing in on them. Charlotte panicked, realizing she had let herself get distracted by the guy in front of her. The dragon was already opening its jaws, and with just one breath, their battle would be over for good. Total defeat. She closed her eyes, already thinking about the afterlife, imagining how she would probably only get to visit home as a ghost on full moons and death anniversaries, when suddenly, everything went dead silent. When she squinted to see what was going on, she was greeted by the sight of the dragon, with its mouth completely muzzled. All of that freezing energy was sucked right back down into the young man's stomach, and using just one hand, he easily tossed the strongest creature among the monsters aside like a cricket. The dragon tumbled back, its eyes bloodshot with rage. Stomping its feet to get back up, its entire body was instantly armored in a thick layer of solid ice. Facing the mighty beast, he did not show even a shred of fear. Extending his left hand forward, he conjured a magic circle filled with countless complex runes. He said, "In my village, if a little dragon misbehaves, we just burn it to a crisp." With that, high-level magic fire erupted, engulfing the entire body of the ice dragon in a strange purple flame. It had no time to run and could only roar in sheer agony. Before long, it was completely incinerated, and its body condensed into a small crystal that fell right into his hand. The young man turned around, flashed a smile, and said, "I just saved your life. Want to reconsider paying for our date yourself?" Connie Charlotte stared in absolute awe. That was insanely cool. He really just took down an ice dragon with a single hand. Being this powerful, she really had no idea who on earth this guy actually was. Connie Charlotte asked who he was, but before he could answer, her body finally gave out from sheer exhaustion. The world spun and went completely dark as Connie Charlotte collapsed and blacked out. He rushed over to catch her, muttering to himself that he was just a puppet who came here to earn some cash. At this point, who he really was did not seem to matter anymore. Waking up with a jolt and a look of sheer panic, Connie Charlotte reached out and screamed, "Ice dragon!" But as soon as the words left her mouth, she realized something was off. It was surprisingly warm, a far cry from the freezing snowfield. These were clean clothes, and that was a soft mattress. This definitely was not the Eastern battlefield anymore. "You are finally awake. How are you feeling? You have been asleep for several days." A raspy, elderly voice suddenly interrupted her thoughts. Looking toward the voice, Connie Charlotte realized it was Master Aceman, the chief mage of the Fram Empire and the headmaster of the Royal Academy. Closing his book, he told her not to rush, assuring her that the ice dragon had already been defeated. The threat to the nation was gone, but there was still one thing weighing heavily on his mind, and that was how the ice dragon was ultimately killed. Connie Charlotte, however, kept shaking her head, claiming she could not remember a thing. The way that young man appeared out of nowhere and effortlessly took down the dragon with one hand felt like a fever dream, making everything incredibly blurry. Since she could not easily explain it, she figured it was best to keep it a secret. Master Aceman sighed and stopped questioning her, then pulled out a small glass jar containing a flickering purple flame that was still burning inside. He explained that she was already unconscious when they found her, but some traces were still left at the scene. Hellfire is a flame that humans can never control. Its appearance here means that an apostle is also present. Those people have been in hiding for so long, yet hellfire appeared in this battle, which suggests there is more going on behind the scenes than they realize. Noticing that the young girl had only just woken up, he placed his book on the table and told her to get some proper rest, saying they could worry about this later. Furthermore, to keep the public from panicking, the Empire would announce that she was the one who defeated the dragon. So, she should just sit back and happily accept the reward. With that, he opened the door and left, leaving behind a bewildered girl with her head down, trying to process the dozens of shocking pieces of information she had just heard. The news of Connie Charlotte single-handedly defeating the S-rank ice monster spread far and wide, bringing joy to everyone. Meanwhile, blending in with the cheerful crowd at a bar, he was holding his head in misery, stressing over how his display of power had almost blown his cover. He suddenly realized that if his identity were ever exposed, he would not only be seen as a freak by normal people, but he would also lose any chance of getting noticed by cute girls. He had only come to the human world to find a wife, but at this rate, it seemed wiser to pack up and move somewhere else to avoid the trouble. Whining, as he tried to sneak away with his luggage, he was suddenly cut off when a group of armored guards burst through the door. The officer leading them scanned the room and shouted, "Which one of you is named who?" Oh boy. This felt exactly like being hunted down by the Imperial Army, and the nosy onlookers instantly pointed their fingers right at him. Caught red-handed, he jumped in fright, thinking his identity as an apostle had finally been exposed. But to his surprise, the officer announced that he had been selected to attend the Royal Academy. The crowd began to mutter in annoyance. Everyone assumed he was completely useless, so why on earth was he getting such special treatment? Of course, the officer heard every single word. With a grim look, he demanded, "Which of you has actually put your life on the line to fight the ice dragon? Who else came back completely unscathed? Is a sacrifice and power like that really something you dare to gossip about?" Every single word was a slap to their faces. The crowd, which had been buzzing like a chaotic marketplace just a second ago, went dead silent. No one dared to utter a word. Suddenly, Yu raised his hand and asked a question that left the officer completely speechless. "Excuse me, but are there many beautiful young ladies attending this academy?" The officer, who had just been singing his praises, didn't even know how to react. After an awkward pause, he finally managed to squeeze out a single word: "Many." The Royal Academy is the #1 school that the Fram Empire takes pride in. It's where the nation's elite gather, and gorgeous girls are absolutely everywhere. If they aren't cute little lowlies, they're breathtakingly beautiful goddesses. Yu stood out like a wild pheasant in a flock of peacocks, looking completely out of place. Staring at Yu's utterly shameless, girl-crazy face, the officer's smile stiffened. He turned to the principal and asked, "Lord Aceman, if I may ask, why did you give a weak mercenary like him such a recommendation?" Hearing the question, the principal simply smiled, his response carrying a deeper meaning. "Just giving a young man a good opportunity, who knows, we might get some unexpected results." Right at that moment, the school's PA system suddenly crackled to life. First, it congratulated those who had just earned the chance to join the Royal Academy before announcing the start of the entrance exam. They expressed hope that the students would pass successfully and make it out alive. As soon as the words fell, 4 magic circles appeared on the floor, summoning creatures known as flame wolves. Just like their name suggested, they were wolves covered entirely in blazing fire. They are typically summoned by high-ranking mages, and of course, their danger level is no joke. It seemed like the first time most of the students had ever faced such beasts, and panic instantly spread. Some couldn't even stand straight, while many tried to reassure themselves that the Academy's test wouldn't actually put their lives in danger. Despite their terror, a few brave students began using magic to fight back. Vines shot out from magic circles to bind the wolves, but they weren't fast enough to catch even a single one. Ice bullets were hurled next, but they were far too weak. Despite being ice magic, the moment it touched the blazing bodies of the flame wolves, it instantly evaporated into a cloud of white smoke. One of the wolves lunged forward, opening its massive jaws to take a brutal bite. A huge chunk of flesh was instantly ripped from the unfortunate young man's body, sending him straight to his grave. Well, this is just great. Bleeding on the very first day of school? How are they supposed to study after this? Watching the 4 starving flame wolves charge at them, the students panicked, turning on their heels and running for their lives. However, among the terrified amateurs, there were still plenty of capable fighters. A long-haired boy stepped forward calmly to face them. As a wind mage, his opening move was a powerful gust of wind that blew the wolves back into a corner. The others also began to team up, with archers attacking from the left, mages striking from the right, and swordsmen engaging in close-quarters combat. Working together, they finally managed to trap all 4 wolves in one spot with a massive block of earth. Seeing the beasts lying completely still, the students cheered, thinking they had successfully defeated them. But out of nowhere, the flames erupted again. In the blink of an eye, the 4 flame wolves merged together, transforming into a monstrous, 3-headed beast. The long-haired boy finally spoke up. As expected of the Royal Academy, to actually use such a dangerous beast for a freshman exam, the flame wolf launched a sudden attack, spitting out a barrage of devastating fireballs. The Academy's main hall was bathed in crimson. Thick smoke, desperate screams, and loud growls echoed everywhere. Yu stood perfectly still, watching. He could easily sense a fireball heading right for him, but he didn't even bother to look. He was more than capable of blocking the attack, but a pair of massive assets suddenly blocked his entire view. The next thing he knew, his world was spinning, and his vision finally focused on the beautiful but panicked face of a strange girl. Everything around them was still in utter chaos, with smoke and fire turning the place into a complete war zone. After checking if he was okay, the beautiful girl quickly stood up and told him to be careful, warning him not to stand there spaced out or he'd get killed. She urged him to leave immediately, saying she could handle the rest. Yu clutched his blushing face, thinking to himself that he was in big trouble. Oh, that face, that figure, that heroic spirit, and such a beautiful soul. She was definitely a good person, no doubt about it. The white-haired girl stepped forward, condensing the moisture in the air into the palm of her hand. In an instant, blocks of ice formed at her command, shaping into sharp blades that slashed toward the three-headed flame wolf. The fire wolf was absolutely furious after that last blow. Growling fiercely, its murderous intent was clear as day. Meanwhile, vines stealthily crept in from the side. But the girl wasn't fighting alone. Her classmates were right there, ready to back her up. She called out, "Everyone, please buy me some time. I can trap it and lock it in place." They all nodded in agreement and charged forward together. Unfortunately, they lacked the raw power to hold it for long. The beast easily broke their formation, sending them flying into the corners one by one. The platinum blonde girl lured the fire wolf toward her, having already set up a binding magic circle under her feet. The moment the three-headed fire wolf stepped into position, a second magic circle instantly formed above its head as she leaped out of the way. Channeling her mana, she activated the double magic circle to suppress the beast. Ice began to crystallize from below, freezing the fire wolf's four legs and pinning it to the ground. Right on cue, heavy chains shot down at her command, wrapping tightly around its neck to block any chance of escape. Seeing the three-headed beast chained up, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They thought it was all over, but as it turned out, some students are top tier, while others are complete trash. They worked so hard to trap it, only for some complete clown to ruin everything. A fireball shot from out of nowhere with pinpoint accuracy, shattering the chains and freeing the three-headed firewolf from the binding circle. The long-haired guy yelled in frustration, "Damn it! Who the hell used fire magic?" He quickly cast a wind spell, raising a barrier of wind to block the falling ice shards and embers from hitting the students. That move might have looked cool, but Hugh knew all too well that if the caster isn't strong enough, it would only fan the flames and turn the whole situation into a complete mess. Seeking revenge for what she did, the firewolf lunged straight at the platinum blonde girl. Frozen in shock, she watched the beast charge. Her mana hadn't recovered yet, and there was no way she could dodge this. It looked like her time was up. Seizing the perfect moment to swoop in and steal the spotlight, Hugh dashed over and pulled her into a tight embrace. To shut these wild mutts up for good, all he needed was one solid kick. The three-headed beast went flying, crashing hard against the massive wall behind them. It gasped its last breath and laid there, waiting for the Grim Reaper. Any tough situation was a breeze once he stepped in. Hugh looked down at the girl in his arms, feeling a bit strange. He asked with concern, "Did I hurt you when I kicked that stray dog just now?" She shook her head, blushing with tears in her eyes as she squeaked out a no. She then told him to let go immediately, or he was going to get punched. Well, that jelly-like softness was definitely bouncy and squishy, even if his hand did slip. Still, this stunt triggered a massive wave of jealousy from the other guys, furious that he dared to lay a hand on their goddess. He's practically begging for a beating. Just as the tension and embarrassment reached a boiling point, a gentle, feminine voice. "All right, that is enough for the exam." One of the boys turned toward the voice and realized the newcomer was Vice Principal Claire. "Oh, this is getting good once the Vice Principal is here. Things are about to get real." The long-haired boy marched up to her and pointed at a student collapsed on the floor, demanding to know why an academy exam had to be this dangerous. Vice Principal Claire simply smiled and calmly waved her hand. Instantly, the injured students lying on the ground transformed back into cards at her command. Only then did they realize these were actually just illusionary puppets. Rumor had it that Vice Principal Claire was a master puppeteer who specialized in controlling objects, and clearly, those rumors were spot on. Getting back to business, Vice Principal Claire congratulated everyone present on passing and being selected for the Royal Academy's elite class. She announced that the one in charge of supervising and teaching them would be one of the 4 great mages of the academy, Kanya Charlotte. After introducing everyone, the vice principal said her goodbyes and headed back to handle the rest of her paperwork. While Hugh was busy hiding from a familiar face, the rest of the students swarmed Kanya Charlotte, asking about her plans for them. She explained that today was just an orientation, but practical combat training would start tomorrow at 7 in the morning. For now, they were free to go and get their things sorted. Unable to hold back any longer, the long-haired guy stepped up and asked Kanya Charlotte why a useless, perverted nobody was allowed into the elite class. He complained that aside from taking advantage of their goddess, the guy was completely useless. The platinum blonde girl quickly chimed in to defend him, clarifying that Hugh did help, and that it was just an accident while he was trying to rescue her. Kanya Charlotte said nothing, and silently walked straight toward Hugh. On the outside, he tried to act cool, but on the inside, he was crying a whole river. He had tried to bury the memory of the day they first met, but now he couldn't shake off his anxiety as she asked, "Have we met somewhere before?" "No way. I just have a super common face, Miss Kanya. You must have me confused with someone else." With one insisting they'd met, and the other slickly denying it, the conversation quickly hit a dead end. Too lazy to push it further, Kanya Charlotte turned around and walked away. She told everyone the list had been approved, and that pretty girl even stood up to explain things for him. "Hey, when you're a gorgeous lady, you make the rules. Anyone who has a problem with it can transfer to another class." With that, the room finally fell dead silent. A few guys still resented him, but since it was the Academy's decision, there was no room for argument. In the end, they could only click their tongues and let it go. Later that night, a small meeting was held in the principal's office. Charlotte handed over the list of passing students to the man sitting across from her. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Principal, is one of those students connected to the apostles?" Principal Acemans didn't answer right away. Instead, he threw a question back at them. "Did anything unusual happen during the exam?" Vice Principal Claire immediately reported what had occurred. Out of all the students, only one was able to send the flame wolf flying. However, they only saw him standing in front of it, and in the very next second, the wolf was blasted away. Acemans nodded slowly after hearing this, processing the information. He suspected that this kid possessed a unique magical talent, a rare gift that not just any mage could have. Realizing it was getting incredibly late, the principal dismissed them, telling them not to overthink the apostle matter. He would handle it himself. Now, despite being practically ancient, Yu still had to wake up early and drag himself to class. As he was yawning and cursing his miserable luck, a true goddess suddenly walked by. With just one glance, the silver-haired girl completely stole his soul. The sky was clear, and the air was so fresh, the perfect day to make a move. He walked up to say hello, casually explaining that yesterday's little accident was just him being clumsy and putting his hands in the wrong place. Even though things were a bit awkward, she seemed to have let it go. With a gentle smile, she introduced herself as Elsa and asked for his name. Blushing like a schoolboy, he shyly replied that his name was Yu. Just a single syllable, a bit plain, but hey, the guy carrying it was top tier. Thankfully, they hit it off, and he quickly won over the beautiful girl walking beside him. The two chatted and laughed as they headed toward the auditorium, completely unaware that someone was glaring at them from behind, burning with jealousy. Right on time, all the students gathered, eagerly waiting for their first practical combat class. Charlotte activated a summoning circle, bringing forth a flame tiger. A nerdy student wearing glasses as thick as bottle goggles took one look and instantly rattled off its stats. Even though the flame tiger's fire attribute was only mid-tier, its raw strength was 10 times greater than other beasts. Hearing this, a long-haired guy scoffed in disdain. They had already faced a high-tier flame wolf, so fighting a mid-tier tiger now felt like a total joke. Wouldn't it just be a massive gank? Of course, Professor Charlotte had a much bigger challenge in mind. To spice things up, she announced that students drawing the same number would be paired up. Their goal? Defeat the flame tiger within 1 hour. Unfolding his slip to reveal a bright red number 7, Yu cried inside, wishing he could tear the paper to shreds. Fate was playing with him, keeping him away from his goddess. Meanwhile, the long-haired guy got incredibly lucky. Striking a pompous, noble pose, he introduced himself as the eldest son of the Paulette family, Kyle Paulette. He clearly thought he was a big deal, but Elsa couldn't care less. With time ticking away, she wanted to discuss a strategy to deal with the beast. Unlike her cautious approach, Kyle remained completely relaxed, bragging that he was leagues above the average crowd. He volunteered to take it on solo, telling his goddess to just sit back and watch. Kyle was the first to step up. Facing the blazing tiger, his arrogant smirk didn't fade for a second. He thrust his hand forward, unleashing wind blades sharp enough to slice right through the stone floor. It was undeniably a powerful spell. Charlotte noted that while wind was a basic attribute, his execution easily reached a mid-tier level, giving him a massive speed boost. The flame tiger kept its eyes locked on him, waiting for the perfect opening, while Kyle was too busy trying to show off in front of Elsa. He compressed the wind into a spherical blast and hurled it straight at the beast. The wind and fire collided, triggering a massive explosion that scattered embers everywhere. The powerful gust of wind was strong enough to blow up the skirts of several nearby schoolgirls. Once the dust settled, Kyle assumed the test was in the bag, but Elsa suddenly screamed and pointed behind him in pure panic. Kyle spun around, only to lock eyes with the tiger's wide-open jaws. The impact slammed his entire body hard against the floor. With a blazing tiger pinning him down, it seemed like this show-off was about to get roasted alive. But in a sudden surge of fire, Kyle threw a punch with every ounce of his strength, right into the tiger's stomach, knocking it off her. Even though he ended up looking a bit singed, he ultimately managed to prove himself as a highly capable mage. Kyle shoved his hands into his pockets, smugly asking Aisa if they were at the top of the leaderboard. Little did he know, the teacher was about to announce they only came in second. First place went to a completely different team. Kyle refused to believe it, insisting there had to be a mistake. After all, he was the strongest guy here, so there was no way someone could have beaten him that easily. Charlotte was already getting tired of this immature brat, so she pointed toward a group having a good time, making it clear that they had finished their task a bit earlier. Following her gaze, Kyle and Aisa realized the top team was actually Yu's group, with him and his female partner sitting together. Not only that, they were actually playing with the flame tiger. It was lying flat on its back, letting them rub its belly like a giant, oversized kitty instead of a fierce beast. How could something so ridiculous even happen? To find out, let's rewind 15 minutes. Back to when a teary-eyed, miserable Yu was holding his slip of paper, searching for his other half, the person holding lucky number 7. It turned out to be a buff girl carrying a massive axe on her shoulder. She cheerfully introduced herself as Eugene, while Yu just stood there, completely frozen in shock. In Yu's eyes, she was decent looking, but she couldn't compare to his sweet, gentle Aisa. Annoyed at being completely ignored after a friendly greeting, Eugene swung her axe down in a rage, forcing him to pay attention to her. Her original intention was just to scare him a little, but to her surprise, he effortlessly blocked her strike with just 2 fingers. Disappointed, and trying to save face, Eugene turned away, claiming she could handle the tiger all on her own. And with that, the beast-slaying mission finally began. Eugene swung her axe in a flash, but the flame tiger managed to dodge it in time. It bared its fangs and let out a menacing roar to threaten its opponent. Eugene planted her axe handle into the ground for leverage, then leaped up to deliver a sharp kick right to its stomach. The blow was strong enough to send the tiger flying, but she left herself wide open, allowing the beast's tail to wrap around her leg. Losing her balance completely, she was instantly thrown to the ground. Eugene quickly sat up, her body aching all over from that careless mistake. Suddenly, the flame tiger lunged again. With no other option, Eugene had to use her weapon to block its massive jaws. The flame tiger might only be a mid-tier magical beast, but its offensive power was nothing to scoff at. Eugene's entire body trembled as she struggled to hold it back. That was when Yu casually chimed in from the sidelines. "Why are you being so mean to a lady, you little kitty? Seriously, can you believe this?" Others had to fight tooth and nail just to stand a chance against these beasts, yet Yu easily tamed the flame tiger with a single question. This innate talent of his earned some serious praise from Charlotte. She made it clear to the entire class that the ultimate way to defeat a magical beast isn't by overpowering it with brute force, but by taming it. Seeing this for the first time, Aisa's face lit up with excitement. Meanwhile, Kyle stood to the side, sneering with contempt, convinced it was nothing but pure, dumb luck. They just happened to run into a friendly tiger, that's all. Winning first place like this was something he absolutely refused to accept. Kyle marched over to Yu, burning with jealousy. He claimed Yu only finished the task so easily because he got lucky with a friendly flame tiger. A few of the other boys immediately chimed in. Everyone nodded in agreement, complaining that their own tigers were far too aggressive and that Yu only won first place through sheer luck without actually doing a damn thing. Yu didn't even react to their petty insults, calmly stating that he had simply used a special skill, an innate magic called beast taming, which wasn't something just anyone could possess. Kyle burst out laughing, clutching his stomach, finding the joke absolutely ridiculous. He claimed he'd never heard of such magic and told Yu that if he wanted to make things up, he should at least keep his lies believable. Yu didn't bother replying. He simply raised an eyebrow. Instantly, the surrounding flame tigers rose up in unison, forming a tight circle around them, and bowed down as if awaiting orders. Yu then spoke up, mentioning that in the 6 eastern regions, the ancients had a wise saying, "A summer bug knows nothing of the changing seasons, but that doesn't mean they don't exist." Many of the students who had initially doubted him were now left completely speechless as they watched the mighty flame tigers submit so obediently. Stepping forward, Charlotte waved her hand to open a magic circle, recalling all the flame tigers inside. Then, she turned to Yu and asked why he hadn't listed his innate magic when he first enrolled. He quickly tried to play it cool, casually replying that since no one had mentioned it to him, he simply didn't know. Not wanting to press him any further, Charlotte changed the subject, announcing that today's lesson was officially over. She added that due to an urgent matter, the rest of the period was theirs to use as they pleased, before dismissing the class. Yu finally let out a sigh of relief, realizing he had just been scared out of his mind. Honestly, about 99% of what he just said was pure BS. Luckily, he'd heard legends about this kind of talent before, otherwise, there was no way he could have fooled them. Then, the students started heading home in groups. Hu had shined so brightly today that he caught the attention of both beautiful girls. On the way, the muscular girl Ajin kept slapping his back, constantly praising him for holding out on them. He laughed it off. Sure, he was happy, but those slaps actually hurt like hell. Meanwhile, seeing Hu laughing and chatting happily with the girls, Kyle couldn't stand it and made a sarcastic jab about Hu's magical talent, questioning why he hadn't even lifted a finger during the entrance exam. The others immediately caught on and started blaming him. They complained that since he clearly had the power to control magic beasts, he just stood there and watched them get brutally toyed with. Someone even sneered that he did it on purpose, just to get close and make a disrespectful move on the goddess Aiza. Hearing this, Ejin couldn't hold back and stepped in to speak up for him. Just because he can control magic beasts doesn't mean he'd do something like that. Besides, if Hu had taken out all the firewolves, what would we have even used for our exam? This immediately shut the other boys up. That's when Aiza chimed in, saying that talent, in the end, still requires hard work and training to develop. Besides, Kyle's wind wall couldn't even stop the firewolves back then. If Hu hadn't stepped in to help just in time, we'd probably all be dead by now. While this calmed the others down, it was a massive slap in the face to Kyle. He was absolutely furious to hear that the spell he considered his absolute strongest was completely useless in their eyes. He was convinced she was lying just to protect Hu, and it absolutely ate him up inside. After finishing the first day's orientation, Connie Charlotte immediately rushed to Principal Asema's office to report the news. As soon as she burst in, she had a huge grin on her face and exclaimed, "Principal, I found someone with the magical talent for beast taming." Principal Asema stopped writing and looked up, asking Connie Charlotte seriously, "To what extent can this student actually summon and control beasts?" For now, Connie still wasn't sure of his full strength, but the fact that he easily tamed a summoned beast showed he was a highly promising prospect. Principal Asema nodded in satisfaction. He figured this guy could be of great help to her in the future. Lunch break passed in the blink of an eye. Aiza stared at the schedule and mentioned that the next class would cover the history and development of Elsoa. Hearing this, Hu broke into a cold sweat, wondering if his little incident of blowing up a fortress had unfortunately made its way into the history books. Before he could find out, Miss Connie Charlotte suddenly appeared. With an extremely serious look, she told him to come with her, dragging him straight to the trial tower. Standing in this sacred area of the Royal Academy, Hu's face tensed up, having no idea why she had brought him to such a place. Connie Charlotte didn't answer right away. She stepped into the center of the hall, activated a magic circle, and began the succession ritual. She asked if he would accept becoming the successor to the legendary flame witch, Connie Charlotte. She thought he'd jump at the offer instantly, but to her surprise, he flat out rejected her without a single second of hesitation. "No way, babe. I came here to find a wife, not to play servant and pour tea for someone else." A light bulb went off in his head. If his master agreed to be his wife, then he'd gladly reconsider. Connie Charlotte threw a tantrum and refused, leaving Hu with no choice but to say, "Well then, let's just go our separate ways." But she countered, "Do you honestly think you can find a wife with your current status and social standing? Why don't you remember the reason you were even allowed to enroll here?" These words instantly stopped him in tracks. She had a point. When he first set foot in the human world, the cost of living seemed astronomical to him. Slaying a monster only paid a measly 3 coins. He went from a big spender who never looked at price tags to sitting at the absolute bottom of society. If this dirt-poor storyline drags on for hundreds of chapters, he'll never get a wife. No way. This kind of cheap drama is absolutely unacceptable. Realizing that he had finally seen the light, Connie Charlotte continued the ritual amidst the warmth and brilliant colors of the flames. She asked him once more if he wanted to become her successor. If he agreed, he could use this status and honor to inherit her entire fortune. Using money to bribe someone, is that supposed to be a noble act? Well, maybe not for others, but for him, it's a solid yes. Throw out all that self-help philosophy and pride nonsense. He absolutely had to cling to this golden ticket. "Master, my future meals are all on you." With that, Connie Charlotte was completely caught off guard and knocked over. He even clung tightly to her leg, making her so uncomfortable that she desperately begged him to let go. But who would have thought this gold-digging, beauty-obsessed leech would refuse to let go? And because of that, as soon as the ritual ended, a master-disciple crest was engraved right onto his forehead. Connie Charlotte originally wanted to just settle it verbally, but now look at this mess. An actual master-disciple crest was branded on him. There was no way she could back out now. Luckily, the mark doesn't show up on its own under normal circumstances, so she just prayed her new student wouldn't go around bragging about it like an idiot. For an entire day, Hugh was hauled away for no apparent reason, completely dropping off the grid. During lunch break, students in the cafeteria couldn't stop gossiping about him. After all, the trial tower is where the Royal Academy judges and punishes students. With Hugh being dragged there, Ajan and Isa had no clue what kind of massive trouble he had gotten himself into. Seeing the two girls so worried, Kyle smugly chimed in, claiming Hugh's beast-taming talent was nothing but a scam. He assumed the school finally caught on to his lies and was probably expelling him as they spoke. In his eyes, commoners were just low-class trash. Birds of a feather flocked together, after all. He asked what the hell they were so depressed about, and hearing those nasty comments made both girls extremely annoyed. Kyle was clearly just suffering from a bad case of sour grapes. Seeing their fierce reaction, he sneered, mocking them for being nothing but a bunch of shallow fangirls. Isa, who had been holding back this entire time, finally snapped and angrily reminded him that everyone had seen Hugh's taming talent with their own eyes. Since they still had no idea what had actually happened, she warned Kyle that he'd better watch his mouth. And speak of the devil, Hugh finally showed up. Hugh suddenly appeared, leaning against the exit like an absolute boss, with a fat pouch of gold hanging from his waist that he'd just snatched from the gorgeous Lady Canny. The gang immediately rushed over to greet him. Ajan anxiously asked him what had happened after he was dragged away yesterday, but before Hugh could even open his mouth, Kyle jumped the gun, insisting that the school must have kicked him out. To put his friends at ease and shut up the haters, Hugh casually dropped the bomb that he had just signed a master-disciple contract with instructor Connie Charlotte. Not only that, he even revealed the crest to prove he wasn't bluffing. The entire cafeteria went dead silent. Kyle was dumbfounded for a split second, but quickly brushed it off, demanding Hugh prove his actual combat strength. He mocked that a beast tamer who couldn't fight was nothing but a weakling. Isa stepped in, calling him out for being completely unreasonable. After all, beast-taming talent is extremely rare, so Hugh naturally deserved his spot in the elite class. But before she could finish, Kyle sliced off a lock of her hair as a warning to back off and mind her own business. Oh, you could have messed with anyone else, but touching his crush? You're dead meat, buddy. Hugh accepted the challenge with a nod, offering a humble smile as he told Kyle that he hoped the guy would go easy on him. They decided to settle this in the combat training grounds. Hugh got straight to the point, asking about the rules and conditions of their duel. Kyle smirked slyly, laying out a set of heavily biased terms that favored himself. He demanded they go all out with their maximum strength, and if Hugh lost, he would have to pack his bags and get kicked out of the elite class. Hearing this, Ajan clenched her fists in anger. This was a total setup. Kyle knew damn well that Hugh was a tamer, and there wasn't a single beast in sight. Demanding he show his maximum power was just blatant bullying. But Kyle wasn't stopping there. His plan to completely crush Hugh was painfully obvious. Before even launching an attack, he summoned a sword straight out of thin air. The moment Isa saw it, she paled in sheer panic. Legend had it that the ancestors of the Bolay family had received legendary treasures from the Elemental King. And among those priceless treasures, the rarest of all was a divine sword of immense power known as Shin Sanbiet. Seeing the legendary blade, Hugh was immediately intrigued. He pointed directly at it and declared that if he won, that divine sword, Shin Sanbiet, would change owners. He flashed a provocative grin and asked Kyle if he was actually afraid of losing, which was all it took to make him take the bait. He readily agreed, immediately prepping his absolute strongest attack. Mumbling an incantation, he channeled powerful magic into the blade. The second he finished, he swung his arm, unleashing a devastating strike called the Gale Judgment straight at Hugh. The slash surged with devastating wind magic, looking powerful enough to rip the ground in half. But to everyone's absolute shock, the strike was stopped dead in its tracks without dealing a single scratch. The entire crowd stood frozen in disbelief as they watched Hugh block the massive blow with just a single hand. With defense this insane, there is absolutely no doubt about who wins and who loses. This sword is way too beautiful, so I'll be taking it. And just like that, the weapon found a new owner. Kyle couldn't even scratch him, so his precious sword basically packed its bags and walked away. There is no getting it back now, but this is far from over. This time, it's Who's turn to strike. Earlier, that punk dared to attack the beautiful Aisa, the girl Who holds dear, so he is going to make him pay double for it. Gently placing his hand on his opponent's chest, with just a tiny squeeze of force, he instantly makes Kyle's chest tighten up as bright red blood comes spewing out. His entire body gets hit by a devastating force, sending him flying far back. The duel ends, leaving both his opponent and the onlookers in absolute shock. Kyle struggles to push himself up. He stares in absolute panic at the blood dripping onto the floor. Even after taking a massive blow, he refuses to accept defeat. No matter what, he simply cannot swallow his pride. Aisa and Ajin excitedly run over to him, showering him with endless praise. Since it was their first time seeing it with their own eyes, it naturally took them a few minutes to fully process it. With class over and nothing to do this afternoon, Ajin suggests they hit a fancy restaurant for a big meal to celebrate their success. That sounds like a plan. The other two immediately raise their hands in agreement, chatting away excitedly. While the three of them are having a blast, Kyle is starting to panic. That emerald sylph sword is a precious family heirloom. He used it as a bet and let it fall into someone else's hands like this. If his dad finds out, he will be beaten like a punching bag. His future is going to be bleaker than a tragic drama. Just thinking about it terrifies him, so Kyle throws away his pride, runs over to block their path, and gets straight to the point. There is no way he is letting Who walk away with that sword. He suspects Who played dirty, so for the sake of fairness, they need to have a rematch. Who doesn't even have to think about it and shuts him down immediately. After all, if they keep doing rematches every time someone loses, they will be here all night. Since Kyle can't get his sword back by asking nicely, he has no choice but to risk everything to steal it back. He boldly declares that if they don't hand over the sword, nobody is leaving. Then, he uses magic to summon a whirlwind around Who's group, clearly intending to trap them. Suddenly, the sword vibrates. Who can feel a connection forming with the weapon in his hand. He won fair and square, and the weapon has chosen its master. You don't just hand it over and then demand it back whenever you feel like it. With no other options, Kyle decides to risk it all. Unleashing his magic, a violent gale sweeps in, aiming to slice the three of them to pieces. Suddenly, an unexpected twist occurs. Magic power surges from inside the sword, completely shattering Kyle's barrier of wind. A warm, brilliant green light radiates outward. The divine sword floats in midair, enveloped by a miniature tornado. As the wind dissipates, a beautiful girl with gorgeous green hair slowly reveals herself. Under everyone's stunned gazes, she floats over to Who and bows, introducing herself as Sylph, the spirit sword belonging to the elemental king. But things are different now. By contract, Who is her new master, and she is at his absolute command for any task. Hearing this, Kyle throws a total fit, refusing to accept it. He beats his chest, claiming that he is the real master. Then, he blames her for not showing her true power earlier, which is why he suffered such a miserable defeat. Finally, he boldly orders Sylph to return to his side immediately, demanding total obedience. Ajin clicks his tongue in disgust upon hearing Kyle's words. This is truly the first time he has ever seen someone so utterly shameless. Who doesn't rush to answer him? He looks at Sylph and asks if she wants to go back to her former master. Sylph shakes her head and flatly refuses, saying he is not worthy at all. Sylph makes it clear that the moment Kyle used her as a bet, he lost all rights of ownership. Besides, losing so embarrassingly makes it only natural that she would abandon him. Secondly, to a spirit sword, strength is everything. Since Who won, she is more than willing to submit to him. Since things are so crystal clear, there is no need to argue any further. Who advises him to just let it go. There is no need to keep embarrassing yourself. With that, he leans down, pats Sylph's head, and says, "Sorry about that. He casually wagered you, while I only won you in battle. Would you be willing to stay by my side and assist me from now on?" When a handsome guy speaks, everything sounds right. So Sylph smiles and nods in agreement. Watching this heartwarming display of loyalty between master and spirit sword makes Kyle want to choke on his own spit. Losing the fight is one thing, but getting stabbed in the back by his own weapon is a whole new level of humiliation. Kyle clenches his fists, burning with absolute rage. Since they mocked him for lacking strength, he is going to unleash his true power and blow everyone's minds. A magic circle opens up. In the name of the prestigious Bole noble family, Kyle decides to go all in and fight them to the death. Unleashing his fire magic with what he claims to be his strongest technique, Kyle raises his hand high, summoning a pillar of huge flames instantly erupted, radiating an oppressive heat. Seeing his opponent go this far, Eugene started to worry that he might lose control and level the entire hall. Yu knew it. He wanted to block his opponent's soul-coiling phoenix strike. Just as he was about to counterattack, Sylph grabbed his hand and urged her master to use her immediately. He nodded in understanding. The moment the fire phoenix soared toward him, he gripped his sword tightly and unleashed two massive slashes. Since magic was no match for a divine weapon, the spell was instantly shattered. The fire phoenix blew apart, triggering a massive explosion that dealt devastating damage. Kyle, unfortunate enough to suffer from the backlash, was swept away by a violent gale, while Eugene and Asa had to activate their magic shields to keep themselves safe. Once the smoke and fire finally cleared, everyone saw a weak Kyle lying among the rubble, looking like a complete loser. Talk about a pathetic sight, but oh well. After fixing Kyle's toxic attitude, Yu's group headed to a restaurant and ordered a table full of food to celebrate. After all, the fastest way to someone's heart is through their stomach. Seizing this opportunity, Yu, the king of smooth talk and the absolute destroyer of love poems, asked, "Isa, do you know the best way to eat these dishes?" Being a practical girl, Isa immediately thought of eating them while they were still hot. Little did she know, his answer was on a whole different level. "They taste best when I feed them to you." Erin rolled her eyes and pouted. She got the point immediately, but she was definitely skipping this cheesy couple stuff. She hadn't even eaten anything yet, but she already felt completely stuffed. Meanwhile, over at Vice Principal Clay's office, the clash between Kyle and Yu was reported back by a paper doll. Clay sighed in frustration at the troublemaker, deciding it was best to let his master handle him personally. As for the sword, Sylph, manifesting a sword spirit after falling into his hands, he feared the Bowles family wouldn't let this go and would come here to cause trouble for everyone. Back in his dorm after eating his fill, Yu kept tossing and turning in bed. Part of it was because the human world's food was incredibly delicious, but the other part was his romantic imagination running wild, picturing his young wife, Asa, in a short skirt. Sylph, resting in a corner, saw her master squirming around like a worm. She quietly took human form, walked over, and said, "Master, you seem to be in a really good mood right now." Yu, who was busy daydreaming, got scared out of his wits and let out a loud shriek. Once he got his racing heart under control, he lowered his voice and told Sylph to give him a heads up next time she wanted to transform. How could a young spirit like Sylph understand why he was so worked up? To put it simply, his current mood was absolutely ecstatic, like a breath of fresh spring air. Sylph heard this and immediately thought her master needed to satisfy his physical desires. As a loyal servant who was highly dedicated to her job, someone who worked purely out of passion and wouldn't complain about a tiny 3 million paycheck, Sylph offered to help him solve this pressing urge. Yu's face instantly flushed red. You could tell he was secretly thrilled but was trying to act all shy. A moment later, he nodded in agreement. The deal was sealed. Sylph immediately pulled out a pair of sharp scissors and casually said, "It might hurt a little, master, but don't be scared. I'll do it very gently." But seriously, what did he expect from a sword spirit? In her little head, solving the problem simply meant snipping it off. Realizing this, Yu immediately dropped to his knees, bowed down, and admitted his mistake. He didn't need any help. He could handle this issue on his own. However, Yu's troubles soon reached Connie Charlotte. Early the next morning, she called him to her room and gave him a harsh scolding. "You just made a contract and already exposed it, not to mention fighting Kyle on your own. Are you trying to cause trouble for me on purpose?" But she was dealing with Yu, and he naturally fired right back, completely unfazed. "Look, the contract was bound to get out eventually anyway, so what's the big deal if they found out a bit early? And as for the divine sword, he was the one who challenged me. Plus, that guy hated me from the start. Besides, Kyle is way too arrogant. I just exploited a small opening and used my own wits to take him down." Faced with such a smug disciple, Connie Charlotte helplessly walked over to the bookshelf to search for something, while telling him to stop causing trouble and just stay put to study basic magic for now. Suddenly remembering something, she added, "By the way, don't call me master anymore. It makes me sound old." Seizing the chance, Yu beamed and said, "Then how about I go call you my wife instead?" "Wonderful." But the moment those words left his mouth, she smacked him hard on the head, looking extremely annoyed. "What did you say?" "The wind is too loud. I can't hear you. Having just been smacked, he wouldn't dare repeat it even if he were paid. So calling her master still seemed like the safer option. Leaving Yu in the room to study magic on his own, Connie Charlotte went to a secluded spot to speak with Principal Aisman. He had helped resolve the issue with the Divine Sword and the Bowles family, but the other side had already discovered that Yu was Connie Charlotte's disciple. So, for the Magic Exchange Conference next week, he instructed her to bring him along to see what they were planning. Connie Charlotte nodded in understanding. He didn't say anything else, only hoping this upcoming magic festival would help her awaken her innate magic. Charlotte knew her master was always looking out for her. Having known Aisman since she was a little girl, she had always held the deepest respect for him. If her innate magic was truly unleashed, she could finally shoulder some of his heavy burdens. Meanwhile, back with Yu, he was completely absorbed in his book, flipping through the pages. This particular section seemed pretty interesting to him. According to the text, humans utilize non-attribute magic as a foundation, combining it with the great natural elements to cast spells. Sylph brought over some tea, and after handing it to him, she sat quietly in the corner, just watching Yu read. Noticing her stare, he paused and asked if something was on her mind. That was when Sylph finally brought up the question she had been holding back, asking why he didn't just tell their teacher the truth. After all, he was incredibly powerful. Yu's expression instantly darkened. After a brief silence, he slowly explained. When your power reaches an infinite level, when you're so insanely overpowered that you tower over absolutely everyone, you're no longer seen as human. You're just a freak. He had lived through it. People respected him, flattered him, and feared him, until eventually, they distanced themselves completely. In the past, he had wanted to get close to a girl, but when he reached out, he wasn't met with love, only pure terror, as if the slightest mistake on his part would wipe out her entire family. He used to have comrades too, but because he was immortal, his friends kicked the bucket one after another. Even though he was at the very top of the food chain, doomed to an eternity of solitude, he actually found peace in hiding his identity and playing the part of an ordinary student. Blending in with everyone else, the feeling really wasn't half bad. While Yu was busy misunderstanding what it meant to be a normal person, the news of him signing the Successors Pact had already become the hottest gossip among the academy students. Some claimed he and Charlotte were definitely lovers because of the mark on his forehead. Others rumored that they were secretly dating, which explained why they were always MIA and never even showed up to class. Even a blind person could see there was something fishy going on between them. As the sun began to set, Charlotte felt a bit guilty for abandoning her student the entire day, so she brought some food over to find him. Along the way, she kept thinking about lifting the seal to avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings. But the moment she opened the door, she saw him slacking off, lazily resting his head on another girl's lap. Seething with rage, Charlotte flew off the handle and blasted Yu with fire, leaving his hair a frizzy, charred mess. In her eyes, the sword spirit girl was too adorable to punish, so she let her off the hook. But as for her master, she still had some announcements to make. Clearing her throat, she informed him that they would be attending the Magic Exchange Conference at the Imperial Capital together next week. Originally, she hadn't planned on bringing him along, but she never expected him to claim the divine sword of the Bowles family. A divine sword taking human form was no small matter, and the organizers of the conference were determined to have him there. If they refused, the people close to them would be constantly harassed by those guys. Yu shrugged it off like it was no big deal. If we have to go, we go. What's there to fear? When the time comes, who knows who will be threatening whom. For now, the conference was put on the back burner. While Charlotte and Yu were away preparing for the main event, the class was left under the supervision of Vice Principal Clay. Class went on as usual, minus two notable students, Yu and Kyle. A group of boys whispered among themselves that Kyle's sudden disappearance was all because of his previous match with Yu. The guy has serious backing now, mess with him, and you'll get wiped out in a second. No joke. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Having overheard their little chat, Yu walked right in and sneered. Is it because I haven't been to the arena in a while? Why does it feel like there are more pesky flies buzzing around, running their mouths? The boys looked at him as if they'd seen a ghost, immediately making up excuses to scramble away. As for Yu, he was given special permission to skip practical combat class. Aisha, who hadn't seen him in forever and missed him a little, ran over to ask what brought him here today. Yu handed her a rose, putting on a dramatic show of how deeply he missed her to win her over. Aisha knew he was just playing around, but with those persistent rumors weighing on her mind, she couldn't bring herself to smile. Suddenly, remembering that he was about to attend the Magic Exchange Conference with teacher Charlotte, Aisha asked if the rumor was true. Yu nodded in agreement and slipped right back into his charming, playful persona, telling her not to miss him too much, since he'd be back in just a few days. A few days apart, and you're still the same old pervert. This sarcastic jab came from the muscular girl, Egan, who walked over carrying a massive axe, making sure to deliver a verbal gut punch to his ego. You didn't back down either and snapped right back. A few days apart, and you haven't been beaten to a pulp in combat training, have you, violent girl? The awkward atmosphere from earlier completely vanished. Aisha let out a gentle smile. It always felt most comfortable when the three of them were just like this. The day of departure finally arrived. In the early morning mist, everything was packed and ready to go, yet even after waiting for what felt like forever, Yu still saw no sign of Aisha. When Sylph came to see him off, she let him know that Aisha wasn't in her room, but he still tried to linger, trying to buy time, until Charlotte shut him down immediately. They were being targeted and had to leave right then and there, or else she warned him she'd show her fierce side. He had no choice but to reluctantly comply. Not long after the carriage rolled away, a dark shadow appeared right behind Aisha. She had been secretly watching from afar, but now she was distracted by someone else. The shadow grinned wickedly, mentioning that the entire academy was completely unguarded. He figured tonight was the perfect time for her to carry out the mission she'd been given. He even took a jab at that kid Yu, noting that the guy clearly had feelings for his young lady. Aisha quickly turned around, insisting that he had absolutely nothing to do with this. She begged him not to report anything about him to the master or her parents, swallowing her pride to plead with him. The shadow let out a smug cackle, saying that if she wanted him to keep his mouth shut, then it would all depend on how well she carried out her mission tonight. Not long after leaving the academy, as they sat in the carriage, Charlotte started filling Yu in on the details of the conference. According to her, the annual Magic Exchange Conference was hosted on a rotating basis by Powerline, Capella, and Isis. It was basically a grand banquet for the major families to share their magical achievements and exchange crucial intelligence. The Powerline family was descended from the founding hero, holding a status equal to the royal family itself. The Isis family controlled most of the military power, and finally, Capella held the reins of the economy and the potion industry. This time, the Magic Exchange Conference was being hosted by the Capella family. Charlotte kept telling him to be careful, but Yu couldn't care less. He was way more focused on the food, even telling Sylph beside him that they needed to stuff themselves once they arrived. Charlotte sighed in defeat, wondering if bringing him along was a blessing or a curse. After several long days of traveling by carriage, they finally arrived. Since Charlotte was an esteemed guest, a servant was already waiting to attend to her as soon as she stepped down. The master of the estate had been eagerly anticipating her arrival, so the butler immediately rushed over to warmly welcome her the moment he saw her. In contrast to his eager enthusiasm, she bluntly told him that she had things to do, and there was no need to bother the master. Giving him a sharp, warning glare, she turned to Yu and Sylph, telling them to go into the hall first to find a spot to rest, while she went to send a quick reply to Master Aisman. Charlotte was about to say more, but thinking better of it, she simply turned and walked away. They split up, one going to handle her own business, while the others headed into the hall to find some good food and fill their empty stomachs. As the heavy doors swung open, the noble venue proved to be absolutely magnificent. Wealthy young heirs and ladies were draped in expensive jewelry and lavish formal wear, and the moment they saw Yu's eyes light up at the sight of the food, they immediately looked down on him with utter contempt. Yu didn't care about them at all. Fork in hand, he kept piling food on his plate, laughing and chatting with Sylph as they swept through the buffet. Not far away, the host himself, Wanda Capella, shoved a maid to the ground and yelled at her, furious that she hadn't brought the beautiful lady to him as instructed. The butler, standing nearby, even chimed in to egg him on. Just as Yu was eating nearby and witnessed this bullying, he couldn't help but say something to Sylph, making a sarcastic comment that clearly mocked their terrible behavior. Wanda Capella glared toward the voice, seeing two incredibly low-class-looking people in front of him. Even though he wanted to kick them out right then and there, he held back and asked who they were, and if they even had an invitation. The moment the answer came up as no, the surrounding crowd immediately went wild. The nobles all assumed they were commoners who had snuck in for free food, whispering complaints about how sloppy the Capella family guards were. Wanda Capella, just as furious, immediately lost his temper and demanded they be kicked out of the venue. Sylph lost her patience and wanted to teach him a lesson, but Yu held her back. He stepped forward and explained that he was Charlotte's disciple, And since he came with her, he didn't have an invitation on him. But the host still didn't buy it, firmly believing that someone as gorgeous as Charlotte would never take a filthy commoner as her disciple. He spoke without shame, but the people around him found his words hard to stomach. Everyone knew he was crazy about Charlotte but had always been rejected, so now that a random disciple had shown up, there was bound to be a storm brewing. While the tension was high, the female lead finally made her entrance. Charlotte walked right over to Yu, confirming that he was indeed her disciple, and got to witness a classic, two-faced change of attitude from the host. Wanda Capella laughed it off, then offered to show her their magical achievements as an apology. But to his surprise, Charlotte rejected him yet again. Linking her arm with Yu's, she said it wasn't necessary and that she and her fiancé could just look around on their own. They say even a storm spares you during a meal. But who? He's just standing there, minding his own business, and still catching major stray bullets. That single line instantly makes the entire hall freeze in its tracks. Even he is breaking a cold sweat. Right then, Charlotte leans in and whispers to him. The Capella family has been using their massive power to force her into marriage, so she's using this as the perfect excuse to shut them down once and for all. Hearing this, Hu's face instantly glazes over with an incredibly awkward smile, but a second later, he plays along, boldly claiming to be the fiancé of the girl standing right next to him. Talk about a plot twist. Since Wanda Capella can't have her love, he instantly switches to pure hatred. He immediately uses this grand magic exhibition as an excuse to humiliate the two of them. With a clap of his hands, the maids bring out a special potion his family spent an entire year brewing, offering samples to the crowd. After taking just one sip, someone immediately chimes in with praise, saying that while it's a bit bitter, taking small sips makes you feel completely revitalized and bursting with energy. This is a high-concentration mental recovery elixir, the ultimate masterpiece that Wanda Capella is incredibly proud of. Hearing the praise, he immediately gets smug, turning his sights right back onto Charlotte and her student. I just heard that some people showed up this year without a single achievement to their name, freeloading and wasting our time. How utterly embarrassing. Don't you agree, Charlotte? Well, someone takes offense at those words and dumps the guy's precious elixir straight onto the floor as a reply. Then, with a cheeky grin, he laughs and claims his hand just slipped. Needless to say, Wanda Capella is about to lose his absolute mind. He screams at Hu for throwing away his priceless potion, asking if he has any idea how many rare ingredients went into making it. Oh please, precious? That's debatable. Hu doesn't even need to taste it to guess every single ingredient. He claims he can easily whip up 10 bottles of this basic stuff in a single day. Ouch. His absolute masterpiece just got labeled as cheap trash. Throwing a massive tantrum, Wanda Capella demands Hu brew it right now to prove it, or else he'll have his crew jump him on the spot. Charlotte starts panicking, seeing Hu talk such a big game, but our boy tells her to relax. He knows exactly what he's doing. All he needs is for her to grab a few basic ingredients. In no time, the ingredients are ready, but when Wanda Capella looks at a table covered in nothing but common vegetables, he throws his head back and laughs in sheer contempt. Hu doesn't care one bit. He rolls up his sleeves and steps into the role of a master chef, tossing in some special herbs to blow everyone's minds. Alright, let's fire up the stove, throw in some fine powder. He starts stir-frying and tossing the pan like a pro. No one knows what the final product will be, but the incredible aroma wafting out is already hypnotizing the crowd. At first, they thought he was making hot pot, but who would have guessed he was actually brewing a high-grade potion? Once the mixture is filtered, a stunning, high-grade potion is revealed. Its vibrant color is just as brilliant as the elixir from Wanda Capella's family. Right at that moment, a distinguished middle-aged man steps forward and asks for a taste. Charlotte looks up and immediately recognizes him. It's Mason, the legendary head of the Empire's magical potion department. A true expert always knows. Hu happily passes him the bottle, but the moment Mason takes a single sip, his face completely drops in utter shock. Good heavens, he spent his entire life studying potions, and only now, in his old age, has he finally met someone who can brew the legendary mana elixir. Hearing this, Wanda Capella's jaw hits the floor. This has to be a joke. Everyone knows the recipe for the mana elixir was lost to history over 300 years ago. How could some random kid brew it? Mason knows the truth. While the elixir itself is legendary, no one for centuries has been able to crack the secret behind its recipe. Now that he's finally found the master who did it, do you think he's just going to let him walk away? Not a chance. Mason steps right up to Hu and bows deeply, offering to trade half of his massive wealth just for the recipe. When a grandmaster offers half his fortune, everyone in the room starts doing the math. The crowd goes absolutely wild. Seeing this, even Wanda Capella jumps on the bandwagon, offering half of his family's entire estate to buy the recipe. He's absolutely sure he's going to win this bidding war, because when it comes to raw wealth, the Capella family easily outclasses any single noble. There's no way Hu can refuse this, right? But to everyone's utter disbelief, Hu actually shakes his head and turns them down flat, declaring he won't sell it to anyone. Talk about a power move. Pushed to the brink, Wanda Capella decides to go all in. He offers not just half of his family's wealth, but also a massive cut of the royalties from every single bottle sold. They say money can't buy everything. But if you throw an absolute mountain of cash at it, it usually does the trick. Hu pulls a complete U-turn at the very last second, trading the recipe for an astronomical fortune. Man, when you've got the skills, getting filthy rich is just too easy. They head over to a private room to discuss business. Now that the funds are transferred, it's finally time for Wanda Capella to look at the secret behind the recipe. According to Hu, the secret of the mana elixir isn't actually in the rare ingredients themselves. Instead, it relies on absorbing and refining the condensed elements floating right in the air. With that, he tosses a wrapped cloth over to him, revealing a strange-looking cooking pot inside. This isn't just any ordinary pot. It's been enchanted with a unique magic circle that pulls in those elements from the air. All you need to do is use high-level fire magic to harmonize the ingredients with the magic circle. The magic circle then gathers 10 highly concentrated elements in the atmosphere, creating perfect elemental osmosis. So, low-grade ingredients actually boost the condensation effect and raise the elemental value, whereas high-grade ingredients do the exact opposite. With the deal officially closed, Callie Charlotte turns to leave, but Wanda Capella suddenly steps in and blocks her path. He mentions that the recent incident at Mount Larada was anything but normal. It turns out, when he sent his men to help the locals, that was when they discovered a cave hidden deep inside the volcano, along with traces of the magical beast, the blazing Qilin. He was confused because, as far as he knew, the blazing Qilin was a magical beast native to the eastern continent. How could it possibly show up here? The man agreed with his point, but said they couldn't rule out the possibility that the Qilin was guarding a flame-engulfed gemstone. It was an extremely rare treasure in Eastern legends, which was why he was gathering an army to retrieve the precious gem. He even asked if the two of them wanted to help. If they succeeded, they would get the Qilin, while the gem would be his. Charlotte Keir didn't hesitate for a second, and immediately accepted the offer. According to their agreement, the expedition would begin in 3 days. For now, the man told the master and disciple to stay put and prepare themselves. Once the two had left, the butler stepped forward and asked his master, trading half your fortune just for a secret? But he could spill the beans at any moment. Plus, there is no guarantee he will keep quiet about the Qilin and the gemstone either. Is this really a good idea? Wanda Capella smiled slyly and reassured him not to worry. After all, he had only promised to take them there, not to bring them back. Burying a secret forever would be a piece of cake. The butler nodded in understanding. Having served his boss for so long, he knew this man was unmatched when it came to being sneaky and wicked. Meanwhile, Charlotte Keir and her disciple were facing a bit of an unexpected situation. Because of a major convention happening over the next few days, all the vacant rooms were fully booked, leaving only a single room available. The hostess hoped the two of them wouldn't mind sharing it for a few days. Charlotte Keir didn't care much, casually walking right in and telling her she could leave. As soon as they entered, he casually tossed their luggage onto the table. Feeling a bit curious, he asked his master, "Why go after the Qilin instead of the precious gem?" Charlotte Keir, of course, had her reasons. To her, the Qilin's blood could transform ordinary fire into heavenly flames capable of burning anything in existence, and drinking it was the only way to awaken her innate magic. She then admitted that the main reason she took him in as her disciple in the first place was just to have him help her pull this off smoothly. Having already realized he was being used, he turned on her, accusing his master of being incredibly selfish. But hey, no hard feelings. After all, I am even more selfish than you, he said, adding that if it were up to him, he would take both the Qilin and the gemstone to have the complete set. But thinking about it, they only had 3 days to prepare, and right now, he couldn't even gather a single speck of magical mana, so how on earth was he supposed to fight? To prevent any mishaps, Charlotte Keir figured she had no choice but to directly transfer mana to him through their contract. To do this, she sat down on the bed and ordered him to quickly activate the crest on his forehead. He blankly complied, and before he could even figure out how the transfer worked, his head was suddenly pushed down. A magic circle instantly manifested, lighting up the entire room. Flustered and blushing, Charlotte Keir stammered an explanation, saying that due to their last accident, her crest had ended up on her thigh, and this was an ancient method of mana replenishment. This way, he could absorb her mana and cast fire magic. Although the method was a bit bizarre, it was highly effective. Normally, he would have talked back instantly. But why was he lying completely motionless now, looking like he had just gone clinically dead? Charlotte Keir started to panic, quickly grabbing his head and pulling him up to check if he was still breathing. What met her eyes was a blissful, goofy smile and 2 long streams of nosebleed pouring down his face. This look definitely wasn't from pain. He was clearly in absolute heaven. A few days went by, and the butler regularly reported every detail of Charlotte Keir and her disciples' activities. Today, while Wanda Capella was having breakfast, he received word that the 2 of them had locked themselves in their room and hadn't stepped out even once. However, the butler added that strange noises occasionally came from inside, making any adult blush and let their imagination run wild. Wanda Capella couldn't even cut his steak properly anymore. He slammed his hand on the table in a rage, frustrated that he was being outdone by some punk kid, while repeatedly muttering that Charlotte Keir's judgment was seriously flawed for failing to recognize an elite gentleman like himself. The person sitting opposite him, whose appetite had just been ruined, spoke up to remind him, "Why so angry, Lord Wanda? Didn't you invite me here specifically to deal with those 2? This silver-haired man was Hastan, one of the 4 ace mages of the Fam Empire, known by the title of the Void Walker. Since he was the first human to ever set foot in the Void Realm, his presence here today was because he had been hired to carry out a highly critical task. While a conspiracy was brewing on one side, the duo on the other side wasn't just sitting ducks waiting to get hurt. Having absorbed Charlotte Keir's mana, he was now fully capable of using fire magic. He raised his hand to try creating a small flame. Having only used high-level hellfire in the past, this was his first time trying something so basic. This turned out to be just as easy as he expected, and it was actually pretty fun to play with. Now that he could control the fire element, he wouldn't have to worry about getting caught anymore, while his master, fearing the dangers of the upcoming trip, had transferred her mana to him and was lecturing him to conserve it for battle. The young man carelessly unleashed a sudden burst of energy, shaping it into a blazing heart just to show off. Charlotte Keir clenched her fists in sheer irritation. Truly, the tree wants to be still, but the wind just won't stop blowing. Ugh, sometimes it's so frustrating, it makes your chest hurt. Outside, the maid knocks on the door on behalf of the host, announcing that the carriage is ready, and the plan to head to the Lorata volcano is about to kick off in a few minutes. Charlotte and Yu, whose faces are completely charred from being beaten, walk outside. Suddenly, she feels like someone is sneaking around behind her, watching. A dark shadow quickly flashes by. At first glance, it looks a lot like Void Walker Hastan. She thinks so, but then shrugs it off. Since she doesn't have any proof to accuse them, she just clicks her tongue and follows the maid outside to meet up with the others. At the Royal Academy, after Charlotte and Principal Aisman left, someone snuck into the Holy Rune Tower that very night to steal something. The sound of heavy footsteps chasing each other echoes down the corridor. But no matter how far they run, they're eventually cornered. Vice Principal Cray tells her to hand over the stolen goods, then activates a binding array and shoots chains toward her to capture her. But she manages to leap out of the way just in time, shatters the window glass, and quickly escapes. The late-night intruder is none other than Aisha. She had been ordered to retrieve an item. Now that it's in her hands, her next step is to find a way to smuggle it out, and then her mission will be complete. A few days later, at the foot of the Lorata volcano, the carriage convoy is moving along when it suddenly comes to a halt. Yu scrambles out of the carriage as fast as he can and starts barfing his guts out. Having to witness this several times a day, Wanda Capella is starting to get fed up, complaining to Charlotte. "He gets motion sickness? Why didn't you say so earlier? I planned a one-day trip, and he turned it into a multi-day journey." Charlotte scratches her cheek sheepishly. They had come here by carriage originally, so how could she have expected him to end up like this? At this rate, there's no telling how long it'll take to reach their destination. Just then, a loud scream echoes from up ahead. A member of the group runs back in a panic, pursued by a whole pack of mid-tier gale lizards. Every single one of them is baring its venomous fangs in a terrifying threat. They were supposed to lead the group to hunt the Qilin, but instead, they ended up dragging back a swarm of gale lizards. Wanda Capella glares angrily and snaps. These magic beasts aren't exactly dangerous, but with so many of them, fighting would be a waste of energy and time. Wanda Capella orders everyone to get in the carriages. Hunting the Killen will have to wait. For now, they need to escape these magic beasts immediately. To their absolute disbelief, as they prepare to flee, they witness an utterly ridiculous sight. Yu is actually playing with the Lizard King. According to Charlotte, his affinity with summoned beasts and monsters is just a little higher than average. Oh my god. Girl, that is not just a little higher. He is a complete freak of nature. Stammering, Wanda Capella asks him to tell the lizards to clear the path for the carriages. He is about to do just that, but then a better idea pops into his head. He is utterly terrified of carriages now. Riding the lizards would be fast, and it saves him from that dizzy, nauseous feeling. Plus, getting some fresh air like this is way more fun. Before long, the Chilean hunting team finally arrives at their destination. In front of them is the cave entrance, but even though everything seems quiet, the lizards won't stop growling. They seem incredibly anxious and restless. Yu orders them to leave, and then he and the others light their lanterns to go inside and investigate. Inside the Keelan's cave, it is dark and scorching hot. Everyone walks in a single file line, moving forward with extreme caution. Wanda Capella walks behind Yu and Charlotte. Though he doesn't say a word, a malicious smirk plays on his face. Even though Yu somehow managed to make friends with those beasts along the way, it doesn't matter. He has absolute faith in Hastan's strength. This encounter will give those two a huge surprise, a one-way ticket to the afterlife. The group keeps walking, and finally, they see the exit. They've reached the heart of the Larida volcano, filled with bubbling, dangerous lava. But fortunately, the precious gem is right before their eyes, completely unguarded by the Chilean. Wanda Capella is thrilled and rushes forward, eager to grab it. But standing nearby, Charlotte senses that something is off and quickly yells for him to stop. At that exact moment, bubbles start rising rapidly from the glowing red lava pit. A few seconds later, a massive shadow looms over them, scaring Wanda Capella so badly he falls flat on his butt. Standing at 3 meters tall, the blazing Chilean from the eastern continent has arrived, ready to unleash its devastating fire attacks. The real deal is finally on the scene. Everyone immediately tenses up, bracing themselves for a fight. Charlotte tells him to step aside and wait for the right moment, because the creature before them is a rare and dangerous beast, after all. Its power might not be completely world-ending, but it is still incredibly tough to handle, and they won't be taming it easily. Yu nods obediently and steps aside to watch. Since he is currently keeping a low profile and acting like an ordinary guy, what else is he supposed to do? His master was right. Against a beast like the Keelan, the magic he just learned definitely won't do any good in a situation like this. If he wants to play the hero, going out there and taking down that beast to help them would blow my cover. Honestly, being a good guy is never easy. The mages hired by Wanda Capella finally began their attack. Dealing with a fire attribute beast in a place literally overflowing with lava meant only ice magic stood a chance at suppression. All at once, they raised their staves, casting their magic circles, and unleashed a spell called Glacial Freeze. Instantly, massive pillars of ice erupted from all directions, forming a freezing matrix that trapped the Chilean right in the center. They then sealed it tight, locking the beast inside a giant coffin of ice. But the Chilean refused to go down quietly. It roared furiously, erupting in a violent torrent of flames. Despite the mages pouring every ounce of their mana into the spell, they couldn't hold it for long. The icy coffin shattered, and roaring flames burst outward. Shards of shattered ice exploded in all directions, violently slamming into the mages. All by itself, the Chilean easily broke through their encirclement. Enraged by the humans' attack, the beast bared its fangs and charged frantically, seeking blood. Terrified by the rampaging monster, the mercenary mages panicked and scattered in all directions. Just when they thought they were about to become Keelan food, Charlotte leaped into the fray, brandishing her scarlet flame sword to face the beast head-on. Her razor-sharp blade clashed violently against its rock-hard horn, sending sharp screeches echoing through the cave. However, even though this Keelan's combat power wasn't quite as terrifying as the ice dragons, it was still more than enough to push her to her absolute limits. With eyes full of wild rebellion, the Chilean let out a deafening roar, unleashing a burst of raw power that sent Charlotte flying backward. During the chaotic clash, the dormant treasure gem slipped off its pedestal, rolling straight toward the edge of the cliff. Dozens of eyes watched the treasure's trajectory, everyone sharing the exact same look of absolute horror. Just as they thought it would plunge straight into the boiling lava below, Yu swooped in out of nowhere like a savior. He dashed forward, snatched the artifact midair, and kicked off the empty sky to land safely back on the ledge. Looking at the dumbfounded crowd around him, he was probably the only one who actually knew what this thing was. Yu calmly pointed out that everyone had it wrong from the very start, mistaking it for a valuable jewel. But before he could even finish his sentence, he sensed countless shadowy tentacles lunging at him from behind. Yu shoved Charlotte out of harm's way, but he couldn't dodge in time. The tentacles wrapped around him like a cocoon, dragging him right into a bizarre black vortex. By the time she realized what was happening, Yu and the gem were already gone. Even the mighty Keelan couldn't escape, getting ensnared by those same tentacles and suspended helplessly in midair. Seizing the moment, Wende Capella barked out orders, commanding all the mages to launch a coordinated assault. The second his voice fell, a barrage of sharp icicles rained down, impaling the Qilin. After a brief, desperate struggle, the beast was finally brought down. Furious that things had gone completely off script, Charlotte marched right up to Wende Capella, demanding to know why he had captured her disciple. With the act finally over, Wende Capella openly admitted that he was the mastermind behind the entire plot. He bitterly blamed her for rejecting his feelings and calling off their arranged marriage, which had humiliated him in front of everyone at the Magic Exchange. Besides, the Capella family had been pushed around by Principal Aisman for far too long. He had invited Hastan here today to settle all their scores, once and for all. Finally putting the pieces together, Charlotte was consumed by rage. She made it crystal clear that if any harm came to her disciple, not a single soul in this place would escape her wrath. That's when the real threat finally showed his face. Hastan stepped out of the black vortex, sneering that Yu was probably already serving as dinner for the Lord of the Void inside the rift, so she might as well stop hoping for a miracle. Those cruel words struck like a physical blow, making it incredibly hard for Charlotte to maintain her composure. It was bad enough that this guy crashed the party, but daring to lay a finger on her disciple was unforgivable. Charlotte screamed, "Then you'll pay for his life with yours." She swung her sword, unleashing a roaring wave of high-tier fire magic straight at him. Hastan didn't even flinch. He calmly raised his hand, summoning a void gate to easily absorb her attack. Charlotte was one of the 4 pillar mages of the Empire, while he was one of the 4 aces. Their magic types were fundamentally different, and his held a slight advantage. The intense flames were swallowed whole by the void, and the very next second, catching her off guard, he hurled her own attack right back at her. Like a mirror reflection, getting blasted by her own spell was something Charlotte never saw coming. She quickly pushed off the ground, leaping backward to dodge, but the explosive force still left her battered and bruised. Hastan looked at the woman in front of him, her body covered in dust as she breathed heavily. He scoffed, "Void magic exists outside the basic elements. No matter how advanced your Scarlet Flame Sword is, you can't counter it." Once again forced into a corner, completely isolated and outnumbered, Charlotte grit her teeth, glaring with pure hatred at the villains surrounding her. Then, her eyes happened to drift toward the Qilin pinned to the ground by the icicles. She only had one shot at this, so she immediately risked her life to run over to it. Wende Capella shrieked, "Lord Void, she wants to take the Qilin's blood to awaken her magic talent. We have to stop her, fast." But Hastan wasn't in a rush since he didn't buy into the rumors besides. The blood of this creature was highly toxic. If she drinks it, she won't be awakening anything. She'll probably just sleep forever. Meanwhile, Caney Charlotte rushed over and immediately cupped the Qilin's blood with her hands, forcing it down her throat. She had no idea the liquid would be so incredibly hot it felt like molten lava straight from a volcano. Her mouth burned, her throat burned, and her entire inside felt like it was being torched in unimaginable agony. Caney Charlotte writhed and screamed in pure torment. Hastan found this sight highly amusing, mocking her for being stupid enough to fall for Aisman's lies. The flame Qilin had always bathed in boiling hot lava, so drinking its blood raw meant her body would sooner or later burn down to absolutely nothing. He wasn't even going to bother finishing her off, since she wouldn't last much longer anyway. Killing her now might accidentally trigger a backlash from the heavenly fire in her body, so it was best to just let her rot. Besides, fate always has a funny way of sorting things out. Once human limits are pushed past their breaking point, you enter a hazy, dizzy state of mind. After experiencing what felt like burning in hell, Caney Charlotte finally awakened her magical talent, the Lord of Myriad Faces. She slowly stood up, her entire body wrapped in shimmering golden flames. "You dare touch my disciple. I'll tear your whole damn world apart." With her intentions clear, Caney Charlotte waved her hand, and countless pillars of fire immediately surged forward. This overwhelming power terrified Hastan Rezun, forcing him to quickly open a void vortex. But to his dismay, not only was he scared, but even the Lord of the Void was too terrified to answer his call. All he could do was watch in horror as the pillars of fire merged into a golden dragon, crashing down like lightning and swallowing everyone on the ground whole. The ground shook violently, sending rocks and mages flying everywhere, leaving them scattered across the battlefield. Once the smoke and flames finally cleared, Hastan was left lying on the ground, his entire body charred black. Although he was still conscious, he clearly couldn't move a single muscle. Caney Charlotte slowly drifted back down to the ground and looked at her hands. Her magical talent had finally awakened, yet why did she feel absolutely no joy? While no one was paying attention, a sudden, slow applause echoed from behind her. Caney Charlotte turned around and was shocked to see Principal Aisman. She had no idea why her mentor was suddenly here. Even worse, he seemed like a completely different person. Lying on the ground, Hastan couldn't help but burst into laughter as he stared at the clueless girl. Moments later, he wheezed out an explanation. "You still don't get it, do you? That old geezer targeted you from day one, waiting for you to awaken your magic talent, because he's already been possessed by the Demon King." Caney Charlotte couldn't believe her ears. According to the legends she knew, 400 years ago, a monster appeared with the terrifying power to steal others' magical talents. That monster ruled undefeated for 200 years, but after a final showdown with the seventh apostle, Celia, he vanished without a trace. Even in her wildest dreams, she could never have imagined that her kind, gentle mentor, Aisman, was actually that very demon. With his cover blown, Aisman didn't feel like wasting any more time. In the blink of an eye, he teleported right in front of Caney Charlotte, grabbing her by the neck and lifting her high off the ground. Back then, he only played the nice guy and raised her because he knew she would awaken the myriad face flame. But now, his little show was finally over. So, he didn't hesitate to spit cold, hurtful words right to her face. With a cold glare, Aisman's body began to rapidly drain the heavenly fire straight out of Caney Charlotte, absorbing it into himself. Before long, the golden flames surrounding her faded away completely, as the myriad face flame was sucked totally dry. Since she was of no use to him anymore, he casually tossed her bruised body to the ground like garbage. Lying nearby, Hastan was already playing his own funeral music in his head. He knew this old monster would come for him next. Yet, no matter how many times he tried to summon that coward, the Lord of the Void, the demon refused to show up and save him. Talk about terrible luck. With his ally ditching him right in the middle of a battle, his entire crew was pretty much dead meat. But just as he was cursing in his head, a rift in the void suddenly opened. Except, the person inside didn't just walk out normally, they literally ripped the portal wide open. Even the long-lost Lord of the Void was thrown out like a rag doll, dead before he could even gasp for air. Holding a brilliant emerald sword, he scanned the area. Finally, his eyes locked onto the heavily injured girl lying motionless on the ground. He asked, "Who did this?" Aisman was slightly caught off guard, surprised that the man before him had actually taken down the strongest entity of the Void Realm. But he quickly recovered his composure and admitted he was the one who knocked her out, casually kicking her limp body toward him. He added that, thanks to his battle with the Apostle Celia 300 years ago, he had realized one important thing. It is because ordinary mages, no matter how many talents they have, can never defeat an apostle. To get stronger, he started hunting for high-grade talents, putting up with everyone's abuse all this time. Now, he finally has celestial fire and hellfire in his grasp. In the future, he believes he can stand tall and face the apostles head-on, rising above everyone else. Yu looked at the old man's delusional attitude and scoffed. "Keep bragging, old man. Just try and survive for a few more chapters. If you're gonna be a villain, you might as well commit to the bit." Aisman cast the myriad flame, unleashing a massive wave of magical fire to incinerate the survivors. But to Yu, this high-tier magic was absolutely nothing. With a simple swing of his sword, he sliced the wave of fire right in half, swatting it aside like a toy before sending it crashing down into the lava pit below. He is a young man who doesn't even belong to the Bolay family, yet he can wield the divine sword, Sylph. Just who is this guy, and how on earth is he so powerful? Yu smirked playfully and said, "Why don't you guess? Get it right, and I might just give you a prize." With that, he lunged forward. Aisman panicked for a split second, but managed to keep his cool. He stomped his foot, activating a magic circle to manipulate the surrounding earth. Massive pillars of stone shot up and closed in on Yu, trying to trap him inside. Yu slashed the emerald sylph in a swift, clean arc, unleashing a tempest of powerful strikes that shattered the solid stone wall. On top of that, he seized the opening to launch a massive sword wave straight at Aesmon. Wind magic formed a raging tornado around the strike as it roared forward. Aesmon quickly threw up a defensive barrier. This barrier was another stolen talent, one he always relied on as an absolute, unbreakable defense. Yet, Yu showed no signs of slowing down. Closing the distance, Yu delivered a chilling line with a bright smile. "Oh, I forgot to mention, when an elder asks a question, failing to answer gets you punished." And he was not wrong. If we went by his actual age, he couldn't even remember how many centuries old he really was. So, calling himself an elder was hardly a stretch. Wielding Sylph, Yu unleashed an endless barrage of sword energy against Aesmon's barrier. His power was simply unreal. Following a deafening explosion, rocks and debris rained down from the crater, triggering a massive landslide. When giants clash, the little guys get crushed. Hastan knew damn well that if he just kept lying there, he'd end up buried alive. Taking advantage of the chaos, he scrambled to his feet and struggled to drag his broken body away. As he passed Wanda Capella, he muttered a few curses, blaming the greedy fool for not doing his research beforehand. Now that those two monsters were fighting, his life was on the line no matter who won. Rule number 1 of survival: run like hell. Meanwhile, things were looking incredibly grim for Aesmon. Yu was simply too powerful. Aesmon's barrier shattered, and the resulting blast left him covered in deep cuts and wounds. Yu glared down at the old man, demandingly telling him to return his master's stolen magic talent. Aesmon laughed like a lunatic, wheezing that once a talent is violently stolen, there is no way to give it back. Besides, their fight was far from over, so why the rush? With that, he crushed the glass vial containing the hellfire. A purple flame instantly washed over Aesmon, erupting from a tiny spark into a raging inferno in the blink of an eye. Glancing at the bodies scattered nearby, he channeled his mana to direct the flames toward them, intent on burning them to ashes. Hellfire is an anomaly, a rogue element outside the standard magic system, and its heat is unimaginably intense. The mages and the ones who had just kicked the bucket were instantly turned to dust. Using hellfire for the very first time, Aesmon looked at its raw power with a mixture of shock and sheer delight. The massive blaze spread rapidly, surging straight toward Yu. Sensing the looming threat, Sylph transformed, erecting a tempest barrier to hold back the flames. Since she was a spirit sword and not human, she wasn't easily harmed by it, but there was no telling how long her defense could hold. "Sylph, take Connie and Charlotte and get out of here," Yu ordered her. But fiercely loyal and seeing her master as her entire world, Sylph flat out refused to leave. Her sole duty was to protect him. With no other choice, Yu stepped forward, looking completely unbothered, as if he were just watching a show. He calmly told her to follow orders and take the others away, assuring her that these sparks were nothing to him. Sylph looked up at her master, thinking that a handsome guy is always right, and immediately nodded in obedience. Aesmon didn't even bother to stop them. With his newfound power, they were nothing but insects to him anyway. He figured he would just deal with Yu first, and then hunt the rest down later to finish the job. But as the saying goes, pride comes before a fall. The hellfire, which he proudly boasted of as his ultimate power, couldn't even singe the man standing in front of him. Not only that, the flames actually gathered in Yu's hand, dancing gently as if they had finally returned to their rightful master. He froze for a few seconds, completely unable to believe what had just unfolded right in front of him. Sure, this guy could control hellfire, but his power was pathetically weak compared to a real apostle. Even if he thought until he went bald, he couldn't grasp what kind of monster this guy was to possess such insane power. Since he happened to run into an enemy who also controlled hellfire, his only shot at turning the tables was to steal that power. With his plan set, the old fox Aesmon immediately activated his God-given stealing ability. But what he actually ran into was the first layer of Hugh's power seal, and the truth behind this guy's identity instantly became his worst nightmare. He had spent all this time running around to avoid the apostles, only to end up running straight into a real one. Showing his true colors, Hugh stared down the man in front of him. After a few moments, he finally spoke. "If you want my power so bad, you can have it. First seal. Release. Surprise, old man." "That's what you get for looting and copying me." He literally pulled out the limited edition version of Hellfire for the old man to see. A real apostle's hellfire is no joke. It blasted right into him, roaring with flames. But surprisingly, he didn't feel a single ounce of pain. In an instant, Old Man Aesmond completely vanished from the face of the earth. As for who Hugh really is, only heaven, earth, and you guys watching know the truth. Now that everything here was settled, he was about to leave when he caught sight of the poor Qilin lying on the bank. Unable to just leave it like that, Hugh walked over and melted the ice pillars, pinning it down. Then, holding up the rumored gem, he asked, "During the fight earlier, did you hold back your full power because you were afraid of hurting your baby?" With that, he returned the egg to the mother Qilin, but the beast was mortally wounded. Knowing she didn't have much time left, she nudged the egg back toward him with her head. Even though she couldn't speak, he understood exactly what she meant. Hugh gently stroked the mother Qilin and assured her that since the egg carried the trace of an apostle's aura, he would personally take good care of it. Understanding his words, the mother Qilin let out a soft, relieved growl, closed her eyes, and peacefully took her last breath. Hugh stood up and slowly walked toward the cave entrance, leaving behind the shattered cliff. As erupting, lava swallowed everything in a sea of red fire. Outside, Shin had been waiting anxiously, so seeing her master safe and sound brought her immense relief. Realizing they couldn't stay here any longer, especially with Charlotte still unconscious, Hugh told Shin they needed to move out immediately. He then bent down and scooped Charlotte up in his arms. Along the way, Shin suddenly noticed that Charlotte's mana had completely vanished, and even her life force was dangerously weak. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Hugh rushed them to the nearest shelter to treat her. They managed to find a safe spot, but the real trouble was her internal condition. While Hugh's magic easily healed her physical wounds, her core was completely locked. Her mana was gone, and her life force was draining by the second. If this kept up, he was terrified his master would end up in an early grave. Suddenly, Shin broke the heavy silence. "Master, don't you still have the mana that Master Charlotte transferred to you earlier?" According to some looted book she had read somewhere, since the target is unconscious, they can't transfer mana through a regular magic crest. Therefore, the most effective way right now is direct mouth-to-mouth contact, acting as a bridge to transfer mana from one person to the other. Hugh's face got red as he quickly told Shin to shut up. She was talking about it so casually, but he was a lifelong single guy whose lips had only ever touched food, let alone a girl's cheek, and now he had to go straight to mouth? There was no way his heart could handle that. Shin rolled her eyes in pure disgust. Honestly, the only thing that mattered right now was restoring Charlotte's mana. If they didn't act fast and her body degraded back to a regular human, no amount of magic would ever be able to save her. Taking a deep breath, Hugh tried to steady his racing mind. He knew she was right. Shin had a point. Even if her life wasn't in immediate danger, losing her magic and becoming a normal human would probably destroy a proud mage like her. With a knowing smile, Shin quietly slipped out of the room. Now alone with her, he carefully helped Charlotte sit up, put his embarrassment aside, and prepared to transfer the mana back to her. After what felt like an eternity, Charlotte finally began to stir from her deep sleep. As her eyes fluttered open, the very first thing she saw was a face she knew all too well. Before anyone could process what happened next, Shin suddenly heard her master let out a blood-curdling scream from outside the room. She frantically burst through the door, only to find Hugh clutching his head and groaning on the floor, while Charlotte was sitting on the bed, holding up her fist with a look that could kill. Getting back to business, Charlotte sat up on the bed and asked what had happened after she passed out. When Hugh asked what happened next, he was slapped with a 2,000-word speech of absolute nonsense. Hugh explained that after he escaped the dark vortex, he saw Aesmond and an injured, platinum-haired mage locked in a brutal fight. The old man was completely outmatched and backed into a corner, and to top off his bad luck, the cliff collapsed, sending him plunging straight into a pit of boiling lava. Hugh couldn't care less about their fight, timing it perfectly to escape with Canny, Charlotte, and Symph. By the time the volcano erupted and the cave entrance collapsed, nobody else had made it out. Hearing Hugh finish his story, Canny Charlotte could only nod, thinking to herself how pathetic and anticlimactic their deaths were. But oh well. He spent so much time plotting and scheming, only to get cut short when his time came. It's in the past now, so it's best to just leave it be. Noticing that Canny Charlotte was looking a bit livelier, Hugh asked how her body was recovering. Canny Charlotte fell silent. Although a good amount of mana had been transferred into her, she was still nowhere near her peak. Right now, she couldn't even pull off basic level magic, so how was she supposed to fight off any monsters? After another brief silence, she finally spoke up, telling Hugh to take Symph and leave. Hu was completely thrown off. His face stiffened instantly as he hurriedly asked her why. Connie Charlotte explained that it wouldn't take long for the other noble families to find out Aesmond and Wanda Capella were dead. One was the premier mage of the Fram Empire, while the other belonged to the Capella family, who controlled the empire's economy and potion production. A major shift was bound to happen soon. Since her current mana was weaker than even an intermediate mage, she knew that staying with her would only put him in constant danger. Despite pouring her heart out, she was flatly rejected. Frustrated, Connie Charlotte snapped at him to use his brain. With Aesmond gone, the Powerline family, who was still incredibly bitter about the Blue Symph, would definitely come after them. Not to mention the Isis family, who had been secretly watching them from the shadows this whole time. When you're surrounded by enemies everywhere you look, just breathing starts to feel like a chore. He knew the risks, but he didn't care one bit. It was a critical time. And if they couldn't run together, then they'd just face it together. There was no reason to sweat it. Besides, as her prized disciple and fiancé, how could he possibly abandon her and save his own skin? Symph also nodded in agreement. Hu was her master, and wherever the master went, Symph followed. She was fully committed to staying and helping her. Connie Charlotte was deeply touched by their words, but she kept up her tough front, warning them that if things went south, she wouldn't be looking out for them. Hu nodded in satisfaction, then pulled out the Kirin's egg, explaining that it wasn't some legendary jewel like the rumors claimed. The Kirin risked its life to protect it simply because it was its own child. Suddenly, Symph chimed in, asking if her master had given it a name yet. Hearing Symph's question, Hu realized he had only ever referred to the thing in his hand as the Kirin egg. Since they had some time to kill, they decided it was time to host the first official naming ceremony. How about we call it Iron Egg? The moment Hu said it, the egg gave him a massive dislike. Even though it hadn't hatched yet, it already had a full range of emotions, literally bursting into flames to reject the name. Getting burned, Hu shrieked in pain and quickly scrambled to come up with a cooler name. But to the egg, Urzuzi still sounded way too tacky, causing it to spit out even fiercer flames. Under the cover of darkness, Hastan dragged his battered, miserable body back home. When the battle erupted, he had managed to use his void domain just in time to teleport elsewhere, avoiding the same tragic fate as Aesmond. Wanda Capella was unfortunate enough to lose his life. Although Hastan had lost a massive business deal, he knew he could at least sell the exclusive scoop to make a quick buck from the newspapers. After all, during a fortune-telling session at the start of the year, the psychic told him that he was destined for wealth and success this year no matter what. 1 week later, news of Wanda Capella's death at Larata Volcano flooded the front pages of every newspaper. Connie Charlotte knew all too well that the informant was none other than Hastan. For some reason, though, he had completely kept quiet about what happened to Aesmond. But that was actually for the best. They were temporarily safe and hadn't drawn the attention of the other families yet. Connie Charlotte put the newspaper down and warned Symph, who was sitting next to her, to be careful. Their little unhatched friend, Little Flame, was still a priceless treasure in the eyes of outsiders, so it was best to keep it completely hidden from public view. Suddenly remembering Hu had been completely MIA since morning, she turned to ask Symph about her master, only to find out that he had gone out to explore and buy some potion ingredients while he was at it. While the two of them were convinced he was out doing serious business, our tough guy was actually strolling down the street, checking out girls to treat his eyes. Well, so much for his cool guy reputation. Now he is right back to his usual skirt-chasing self. Standing in the middle of a crowded street, surrounded by stunning beauties and pretty girls everywhere he looks. He is on cloud 9, feeling like he has wandered into a spring paradise. Getting to study and play at the same time now, this is what you call enjoying life. While enjoying himself, his eyes suddenly land on a young man walking out of a pharmacy. Oh shoot, he almost forgot. Snapping back to his main task, he immediately bolts right into the shop. A little bell chimes, signaling his entrance. Welcoming him is the customer service smile of a beautiful shopkeeper. She warmly welcomes him, asking what he is looking for. Her shop is stocked with all colors and varieties. They have got everything, though maybe not in bulk. Hu's head spins a little hearing that. He tells her he is looking for some medicinal ingredients to brew some medicine, though they are a bit hard to find. She laughs it off, confidently boasting that her shop is #1 in the empire when it comes to inventory, so there is no way she won't have what he needs. She was talking big, but the moment she sees the list of ingredients written on the paper, her face turns pale. She stammers that while these things do exist in the world, her shop definitely does not have them. These are ultra-rare items that you could not even buy with 1,000 gold pieces. Seriously, dude. Walking up to a vegetable stand and asking for 1,000-year-old ginseng is a quick way to get slapped silly by the vendors. How on earth is anyone supposed to sell you that? With no other choice, the shopkeeper can only force a strained smile, bowing and admitting she does not carry what he wants. At first, Hu thought he would easily buy everything and use his free time to flirt with girls. Who would have thought that things he considered common weeds back home would be incredibly rare in this world? As he stands there silently pondering where to search next, the girl's eyes suddenly light up. She has locked her ass into the flame, right onto the spatial ring on his finger, embedded with a high-grade magic stone. A top-tier item like that means its owner must be filthy rich. There is no doubt about it. She quickly catches up to him and suggests checking out the annual black market auction for confiscated goods. They sell all kinds of things there, from high-grade weapons and elf slaves, down to rare herbs and mysterious powders. Right after pitching her sales pitch, she immediately whips out an admission ticket and sells it to him for 100 gold coins. Though his money vanished in an instant, he did get some valuable info. The auction starts tonight at 7 o'clock in the basement of the Dragon Knight Tavern. Hu was totally ripped off and has no clue. The second he turns his back to leave, the smile instantly vanishes from the girl's face. With her wavy brown hair flowing down to her shoulders, her act as the shopkeeper is officially over. Just then, the actual owner of the shop sheepishly steps out from the back. He hesitates and whispers, "Lady Linda, what brings you here?" "I swear I have already paid this month's protection fee in full." She gives a sweet smile before smugly raising her chin like a winner, taking a moment before replying, "What else would I be here for?" "To reel in a big fish, of course. And speaking of a big fish, she just found one. Who knows? She might even haul in an entire school of them in the future." As dusk begins to fall, Hu is still wandering around, searching for the Dragon Knight Tavern the girl mentioned. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through his shoulder. He has just bumped into a rather strange person wearing a black cloak. It was a complete accident, but for some reason, even though he has already apologized, the guards accompanying the cloaked figure aggressively charge at him, looking for a fight. Fortunately, their master is reasonable. She signals them to stand down, and advises him to watch his step next time before leaving with her crew. Hu just stands there, watching them until they disappear into the distance. Afterward, acting like nothing happened, he brushes it off and continues his search for the Dragon Knight Tavern. He finally reaches his destination. Surrounded by the bustling crowd coming and going, Hu sits in a corner, sipping on some fruit juice to ease his mind. This drink is actually pretty good. After taking a huge gulp, he decides to order another glass before the auction gets underway. Just then, he overhears two people whispering nearby. They are talking about a highly valuable item up for auction tonight. According to one of the men, it is a divine artifact from the Cult of Bliss, and a lot of people have their eyes on it. Some major heavyweights have already arrived early to wait. Over on one side is Hugh, the King of Destruction. On the other is Ratio, the Lightning Snake, along with several other big names. Hu has no idea who those people are, but judging by how shocked the other listener is, it is obvious how incredibly valuable that artifact must be. Putting his eavesdropping aside, he goes back to enjoying his insanely delicious juice. As he is savoring it, a girl approaches him. Showing zero hesitation, she deliberately presses her chest close to him as she strikes up a conversation. She is the same girl who sold him the admission ticket. After introducing herself as Linda, she offers to be his personal guide. Needless to say, he falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. This absolute skirt chaser immediately blushes and nods like crazy since she is beautiful. She can have whatever she wants. Right at 7 o'clock in the evening, the auction finally began, and the entire hall was packed to the brim. Every single seat was taken. You asked the girl sitting right next to him why they weren't worried about being caught, especially since this was an illegal black market auction with such a massive crowd. Linda burst out laughing at his incredibly naive question. Of course, illegal businesses like this always have powerful backers, and the organizers of this auction are all members of the Serpent Clan. Around here, the Serpent Clan is the most powerful family, and absolutely no one dares to cross them. Not to mention, most of the people who come to trade at this night market aren't exactly law-abiding citizens, so anyone trying to raid this place would have to seriously think twice. Just then, all the lights in the center of the stage focused on a man in a suit. He was the host of today's auction. After a brief, standard greeting, he proceeded to unveil the very first item. Inside the glass case carried by the assistant was a demon's arm, capable of summoning demons or placing curses on others. The starting bid was 50,000 gold coins. Once the item was displayed, the bids naturally started pouring in. Linda cheerfully advised him that since it was a rare opportunity to attend, he shouldn't be stingy and let these great items slip away. But who would have thought? He dismissed a hairpin dug up from a 1,000-year-old ancient tomb as a bringer of bad luck. Even a precious ring, a relic from Huyen Kong City, was rejected for some ridiculous reason. One by one, every single item was ignored by the guy sitting next to her. Losing all interest, Linda stopped trying to pitch to him. From that moment on, a completely different plan began to form in her mind. If he ended up not buying a single thing, she would just steal that expensive ring on his finger for herself. After a period of intense bidding, a sudden hush fell over the room. The highly anticipated main item was finally brought onto the stage. The cloth was slowly pulled back to reveal two treasures, the Frost Jade Bracelet and the Judgment Lotus, with a starting bid of a whopping 2 million gold coins. Yu, the King of Destruction, was the first to stand up, raising the bid to 3 million. Soon, other hands shot up, rapidly driving the price higher and higher. Just when Linda was beginning to think she had misjudged him, and that Yu was nothing but a regular guy, with nothing to his name except that precious ring, Yu suddenly stood right up. He calmly offered an astronomical price, instantly silencing the entire hall. 10 million? That's right, 10 million. The moment he spoke, the crowd erupted into a flurry of shocked whispers. Beads of sweat broke out on the host's face as he prepared to slam his gavel, but suddenly, another voice from the other side raised the bid. 13 million. It was a jaw-dropping price that made everyone shudder at such insane spending. Yu recognized that bidder as the guard he had met earlier, and the girl in the black cloak was right there with him. It seemed they had joined this auction for the exact same two treasures. However, with more than half of the Capella family's wealth in his hands, Yu was the ultimate hidden billionaire here. This victory was already in his pocket. Yu confidently secured the two items by raising the bid threefold, backed by the S-Class void ring on his finger, which was embedded with max-level magic. Hearing this, everyone's faces turned pale. Flexing this hard was practically telling everyone else to go home. The guard turned to ask his master if they should continue bidding, but she told him there was no need. From her observations, she could tell his goal here was the same as hers. Besides, since he could casually bid such a high amount, he definitely had plenty of cash left. For now, they should quietly bide their time, see how things play out, and then make their move. With no one left to outbid him, the treasures naturally went to him. The host instructed Yu to head backstage with him later, to finalize the paperwork and claim his items. Sitting in the audience, Linda was equally thrilled. She wanted to use this chance to act as his guide, waiting for the perfect moment to pull a fast one and steal the items. But to her surprise, Yu was so eager to head back that he rushed straight down to the host's podium. Terrified, she quickly called out to stop him, but unfortunately, she was too late. It was his first time here, so he had no idea about the local underworld rules. During an auction, any buyer who steps onto the stage without permission is considered to have broken the rules. Not only must the buyer pay the full price for the item, but absolutely anyone in the auction house is allowed to charge the stage and steal it. Seeing their chance, a gang of opportunists immediately lunged forward, swarming the stage. Yu, the King of Destruction, acted fast, launching countless fireballs to wall off the treasure and successfully reaching it. One thief smirked, thinking the treasure was within his grasp, only to be caught completely off guard as the room's temperature plummeted below zero and the floor iced over. In the blink of an eye, he was frozen solid into a statue. The other thieves trying to snatch the treasure met the exact same fate. Wherever the girl in the black cloak walked, a bone-chilling cold spread, freezing everything in its path. Once she had frozen everyone who dared to compete with her for the treasure, she finally pulled back her hood, revealing a stunningly beautiful yet cold and mysterious face. Her name was Marina Isis, the daughter of General Isis, and one of the Empire's ace mages, known to the world as the Frost Duchess. Marina walked up and casually opened the glass display case, ready to take the items. But out of nowhere, someone grabbed her by the wrist. It was Yu, he flatly told her. Touching other people's stuff without permission is wrong. You can't just expect a free meal without working for it, can you? Who do you think you are, acting so cool? Marina froze for a few seconds before quickly pulling her hand back. By then, Yu had already snatched the item and casually told the auctioneer that he'd be taking it with him right away. Marina had been lying in wait for a long time, barely managing to find the chance to grab the Frost Jade bracelet to boost her magic power by another level. only for him to snatch it right from under her nose. Furious, she immediately unleashed her magic, casting her ultimate spell, Ice Prison. True to its name, the temperature plummeted in an instant, plunging the entire hall into a bone-chilling cold. The crowd at the black market auction realized things were going south and instantly scrambled for the exits. A few people from the King of Destruction, Yu's group, also tried to flee with the crowd, but they found their path blocked by a massive wall of ice. She used her magic to trap everyone inside her frozen fortress, then marched toward Yu. She declared that for the next 1 hour, he would be trapped here with nowhere to run. He was already in a rush to get back, so having these low-life thieves block his path was incredibly annoying. Yu quickly swiped a sword from a bystander, without him even noticing. "You want to block me? Then I'll just tear this pathetic prison to pieces." Kim Kang-stan scoffed when he saw Yu holding a plain iron sword. He slammed his fists into the ground to show off his brute strength before charging wildly toward him. Wanting to get home quickly to brew medicine for his master, Yu decided to release his first seal, unleashing a tiny fraction of his true power. Kim Kang-stan charged like a mad bull. Yu gripped his sword tightly and unleashed a massive slash right at him. Where his blade went, everything fell silent. In front of the infinite apostle, anyone who dared block his path was as good as dead. With just one slash, a massive section of the hall was instantly leveled. Hit by the attack, Kim Kang-stan barely managed to squeak out a single line before he was sent flying, getting written out of the story on the spot. Yu stood there, completely unfazed, and said, "I'm in a hurry. Don't come at me one by one, just all of you attack at once." Those words carried so much weight that the crowd's desire to steal his treasure instantly cut in half. Unlike those cowards, Marina opened a magic circle, conjuring countless sharp ice pillars aimed directly at him, and sent them raining down. But halfway through the air, they all suddenly froze in place. Her goal wasn't to kill, but to steal. She said, "I only want the Fan Sinlian bracelet. You can keep the rest." Yu clicked his tongue. "My bad, but I need both the bracelet and the Fan Sinlian." The ice prison continued to crackle and pop. Losing all her patience, Marina gave him one last chance to hand them over, but he still flatly refused. Left with no choice, she waved her hand, and countless razor-sharp ice pillars rained down like a storm. Without a hint of fear, Yu didn't even use much of his power, relying solely on the fire magic he learned from Kerr and Charlotte to shatter them all. Marina knew that attack wouldn't work on him, but that was fine. What she really needed was the explosion he would cause to defend himself. She then unleashed her second move, Ice Burial. It swept through everything, shattering from above on her command and crashing to the ground. Yu didn't run in time, or rather, he was just too lazy to dodge, and a colossal block of ice crushed the exact spot where he was standing. A massive boom shook the entire hall. The giant block of ice sat heavily on the floor, releasing a stinging wave of freezing air. All around, after being ravaged by the relentless ice storm, the entire hall was left in complete ruins. Marina quickly ordered her subordinates to rush to the giant ice block and find the items. Since she hadn't seen the bracelet earlier, she suspected he had hidden it in a space ring, which must have dropped somewhere nearby. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind her. She whipped around, only to realize the figure standing behind the misty frost was none other than him. Marina's face stiffened in pure shock, because she never expected him to dodge it in time. There wasn't even a single speck of frost on his clothes. Knowing what she was wondering, Yu muttered, "You chanted your spell so loudly, even a pig could have heard you." Not to mention that giant block of ice was so obvious, and the freezing air was so overwhelming, it would be harder not to notice it. Her cheap tricks and sneak attacks were so blatant and pathetic that fighting her was just a waste of time. Seeing that Marina still refused to back down, Yu raised his sword and asked if she wanted to keep going. With that, he delivered a lightning-fast slash, seemingly simple, but containing hundreds of ultra-fast cuts invisible to the naked eye. Marina's clothes were shredded to pieces, leaving absolutely nothing behind. She was completely exposed for everyone to see. She hugged herself, collapsing to her knees, looking completely lost and terrified. Seeing his master in distress, the guard rushed over to drape a cloak over her shoulders. While Marina is still in shock, Yu raises his sword and asks the crowd if anyone else wants to try stealing his loot. "Speak up now, or I'm heading home," he says. Hearing this, the Vice Guildmaster and his lackeys shake their heads like crazy. They've already had a first-hand taste of his terrifying power, so they'd have to be suicidal to cause any more trouble. Meanwhile, Marina's guard asks if she wants to deploy the army to hunt Yu down for revenge, but she has the exact same reaction as everyone else who watched him swing his sword. She knows damn well that if he wanted to, he could easily end her life. This is a fight they have 0% chance of winning. Accepting reality and backing down is her only smart move. Yu then walks up to the exit and uses his sword to slash through the thick ice blocking the doorway. With the path finally clear, he calmly turns to everyone and says, "All right, you guys can head out now." He then turns to his friend Linda, asking her to return the sword for him. Before leaving, he cheerfully mentions that she'd look even cuter with her hair tied up. After they part ways, Linda stands there, blushing and completely spaced out, watching him walk away until he disappears. Some bystanders can't help but ask her who that insanely powerful guy really is. The once calculating Linda completely changes her tune. Cupping her burning cheeks, she swoons and declares, "He's handsome on the outside, absolutely loaded with cash, and completely overpowered. He's definitely my husband, no doubt about it. In this life, the next life, and the one after that, I'm not marrying anyone else. This deal is absolutely set in stone." She's determined not to let him escape her grasp. Meanwhile, Yu is walking home, sneezing up a storm, totally unaware that his accidental flirting just won him a future wife. His house is practically in sight, but then he hears the sounds of a scuffle nearby. A group of big, burly guys are ganging up on a defenseless girl. Furious, he steps in and snatches the whip straight out of the lead thug's hand. The rest of the gang immediately surround him with wooden clubs, demanding to know who he is, and warning him to mind his own business if he doesn't want to get beaten to a pulp. "Oh, I'm so terrified. Looks like I'm going to have to make an example out of one of you." Yu gives the whip a hard yank, and the unlucky thug goes flying through the air like a leaf in the wind. The guy slams hard against a nearby brick wall and gets knocked out instantly. Yu casually turns to the others and asks, "What did you say again? The wind's a bit too loud. I didn't quite catch that." "This guy is built like a monster. How are we even supposed to fight him? He just wrecked our guy in one shot. I am not staying to get beaten up next." The remaining thugs wisely keep their mouths shut, whisper among themselves for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then turn tail, fleeing down the empty alley as fast as their legs can carry them. With just the two of them left, Yu kneels down to check on the girl. But as soon as their eyes meet, they are both stunned to find themselves reunited with an old acquaintance in such a bizarre situation. Late into the night, Yu still hasn't returned. Charlotte's heart is filled with worry, and unable to sit still any longer, she decides to head out and search for him. Just as she opens the door, Yu walks right up to the entrance. Surprisingly, he has someone else with him, and it's none other than Ajin. Charlotte quickly ushers them inside. Once Ajin devours some food to satisfy her empty stomach, she finally explains why she came looking for them. Apparently, Isa suddenly announced she was dropping out of school to return home, but since she left, there has been absolutely no way to contact her. Worried about her friend, Ajin came to inform Yu and Charlotte of the news, hoping they could all head to Isa's house together to find out what on earth is going on. Charlotte asks if Isa had been acting strange in any way before she left the academy. Sure enough, Ajin confirms that Isa was deeply depressed the day she left. Sensing that this is a complicated situation, Charlotte and Yu decide to split up the next morning. Yu will go with Ajin to investigate Isa's house, while Charlotte has to return and deal with the news regarding Aceman. Before they head their separate ways, Yu hands Charlotte a potion he brewed himself, telling her to keep taking it once she gets back to the academy. While it won't instantly restore her mana, it will significantly speed up her recovery. As Charlotte takes the bottle, her eyes drift over to Ajin, who is happily playing with Sin. She lowers her voice and warns Yu to stay far away from anyone associated with the 3 major families. She explains that Ajin's full name is Ajin Isis, sharing the same last name as a legendary general from one of the 3 major families. She worries that Yu might end up getting dragged into massive trouble without even realizing it. But Yu couldn't care less. He makes it clear to his master that Ajin's family background doesn't matter to him. Even if she really is a member of the powerful Isis family, she is still his friend, and nothing is going to change that. Charlotte simply nods in understanding, offering no further arguments. The time to set off had arrived. After exchanging a few final words, they split up, each heading off to handle their own business. As the carriage rattled along the rugged dirt road, Eugene was splayed out inside, fast asleep in the most ridiculous position. Hugh sat curled up in a corner, looking at her with a look of utter disbelief. For a split second, he seriously wanted to take back everything he had just said. He did not want to call this girl his friend at all. But then, thinking about how she had braved such a grueling journey, traveling all the way from the academy just to find him, he could not help but soften up. Ultimately, he could only murmur a soft wish for her to have a good night's sleep. After traveling for 2 grueling days, they finally arrived. But to their absolute shock, what lay before them was the dusty, run-down Lawrence Manor. Weeds grew knee-high. From the shattered roof tiles to the filthy windows caked in a thick layer of dust, Eugene actually thought they had come to the wrong place. But the driver insisted this was definitely the Lawrence estate. According to him, the family had vanished about 15 years ago, leaving the place abandoned ever since. Hugh and Eugene stepped inside, only to find that the interior was not much better than the outside. 15 years of neglect had left the brick walls cracked and stained. The entire place was hollow, with trash strewn all over the floor. Suddenly, something plummeted from above with a loud crash, scaring Eugene half to death. When she walked over and pulled back the covering cloth, she discovered it was a portrait of Isa's parents. Hugh was not sure if the family had simply moved away, but for the next few days, the two of them would stay here to investigate what had really happened to the Lawrence estate. Suddenly remembering something, Eugene mentioned that before Isa left, she had asked her to give him something to keep in touch. The two of them headed to a local tavern to take a break and see what exactly Isa had sent. Opening the wooden box, they found a dimensional ring engraved with a mysterious emblem. Some time ago, Eugene had visited the guild to ask around, but almost no one had ever seen the emblem on the ring. But wait, could this have been engraved by the Count? Just then, the tavern owner suddenly chimed in, breaking the silence. She thought for a moment, then revealed that the ring belonged to the handsome and dashing Count Theodore. Back then, while she was caring for Lilith's sick husband, she had spotted it a few times. Lilith, of course, was the mistress of the Lawrence estate. However, she suspected that Lilith had not actually gone missing, but had instead taken her child and eloped with the Count. For a widow, raising a child on her own was certainly no easy task. Finding a new protector was probably the smartest decision she could have made. Taking the hint, Hugh immediately asked about the Count's whereabouts. That was how they learned he was currently in the southeastern part of the Narnia Empire. But she also warned them that the Empire was highly dangerous right now, as rumors claimed demons were running rampant everywhere. With that, the landlady went back to her work. Eugene then turned to Hugh and asked him to teach her battle chi. Hearing this for the first time, Hugh stared blankly and asked what that even was. Eugene had to explain that it was elemental mana, which, depending on one's talent, could be combined with a small amount of non-attributed mana to unleash devastating power. Remembering how he had defeated Kyle, she looked at him suspiciously, since she had assumed he used battle chi instead of his own raw strength. She asked, "Don't tell me you don't even know what elemental magic is?" Hugh scratched his head and let out a forced laugh. Stammering, he claimed he was just testing her knowledge, then quickly changed the subject before he blew his cover. Meanwhile, back at the Royal Academy, Connie had been searching Aceman's room for hours, turning the entire place upside down, but still found absolutely nothing related to the Apostle. Even the drawer sealed with a magic barrier showed signs of being pried open by someone. She knew Aceman's death had to be kept a complete secret, or the Empire would face an even greater threat. And the most pressing matter was the upcoming 5 Academy tournament. She was worried sick, wondering if Hugh and Eugene would make it back in time to participate. 2 weeks quickly flew by. When Hugh's carriage arrived in the heart of Narnia, they witnessed firsthand the gloomy atmosphere of the city. Every house was tightly shut, and the residents wandered the streets looking completely exhausted. Seeing this, Eugene anxiously asked if they had somehow taken a wrong turn. Hugh shook his head. There was no way the driver could have gotten lost. But seeing how even the general store was boarded up, something was definitely off. Just then, a bustling crowd ahead caught their attention. They immediately decided to stop the carriage and go check it out, only to discover that they had stumbled upon the guild. Adventurer Eugene rushed over, eager to ask about Count Theodore, and as luck would have it, she had actually come to the right place. The receptionist gave a warm smile and confirmed that Count Theodore was indeed there. But first, she wanted to know what they needed him for. Eugene was about to explain that they were looking for information on Isa, but before she could speak, Hugh covered her mouth and dragged her into a corner. He whispered to her that if Isa's mother had actually remarried the Count, then the locals living near Lawrence Manor would have known about it, instead of believing she had gone missing. That meant she must have wanted to keep the whole thing a secret from outsiders. With his explanation out of the way, he turned back to the receptionist and lied, claiming he had found the Count's ring on the street, and that they were only there to return it, hoping to maybe score a little reward money. The girl nodded, looking understanding, before telling them that the Count was currently staying in the outskirts, and that reaching him required crossing the vast Nonia forest. But there was a catch. Over the last 6 months, Magic beasts had been appearing in droves, and rumors quickly spread that the demon clan was behind it. It was only recently that they finally confirmed actual traces of their presence. This area was Count Theodore's territory, yet he had not lifted a finger to deal with the threat. In fact, the bounty and the subjugation order for the demons were entirely put together by their adventurer guild. She then casually added that anyone who managed to slay a single demon would walk away with 5 million shiny gold coins. Talk about a golden opportunity. Our opportunistic hero immediately realized he could solve this demon problem for his future father-in-law. If things went his way, he would score a massive payday and maybe even win Isa's hand in marriage. Still, Eugene could not help but wonder, because as far as she knew, the demon clan had gone extinct ages ago, so how on earth were they showing up here? The receptionist did not have an answer either. She mentioned that the guild had sent out a hunting party of 100 men earlier that day, but not a single soul had returned. This piece of news suddenly triggered Yu's memories of the past, a time when demons and humans lived side by side in peace, before a series of events sparked a devastating war. The 10th apostle, Oman, fought for humanity, while the 12th apostle, Casparus, sided with the demons. Once close friends, they found themselves on opposing sides, triggering the very first battle between apostles. When the dust settled, both Oman and Casparus vanished without a trace, and the demon clan was never seen by humans again. Remembering that dark era only made him sigh. The sheer brutality of that war had left humanity terrified of the apostles, or, more accurately, terrified of a godlike power that went far beyond anything humans could ever hope to comprehend. Meanwhile, deep inside the Narnia forest, bodies littered the forest floor, and the sickening stench of fresh blood hung heavy in the air. The sole survivor of the hunting party scrambled to escape, his body covered in deep gashes, only to trip over a stray root and crash hard onto the dirt. Within seconds, the bloodthirsty beasts closed in, sealing off every possible escape route. He desperately begged for his life, but his cries fell on deaf ears. A massive clawed hand slashed down. With one final, agonizing shriek, he collapsed into a growing pool of his own blood. After hearing about the massive hunting party, Yu asked out of curiosity, "Wait, you sent 100 people just to hunt a few monsters? Are there really that many of them?" The receptionist shook her head and explained, "Well, yes, but they were actually tracking just one target, a demon werewolf. Hearing that they needed 100 fighters just to take down one single werewolf, Yu figured a couple of quick swings with a sword would do the trick. Why the hell did they make such a big deal out of it?" The receptionist's eyes went wide in disbelief, thinking he must be some legendary gold-tier adventurer to talk that big. But when he proudly showed off his badge, revealing he was only Iron Tier, the entire room erupted into hysterical laughter. Out of sheer pity, the girl tried to talk some sense into him, explaining that werewolves are incredibly agile, possess insane speed, and can even manipulate high-level dark magic. Even a seasoned gold-tier adventurer would be lucky to make it out alive, let alone an Iron Tier, nobody like him. Hearing all the terrifying rumors about this vicious demon werewolf, Eugene instantly lost her nerve and begged Yu to find another route. Yu just laughed it off, reassuring her that nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it. Besides, now that they knew where the Count was, they had to move fast. As night fell, the two of them began wandering through the dark woods, looking for any sign of the beasts. Eugene, fully aware that she was just an intermediate mage, kept her head down and practically begged to turn back. The forest was black and overgrown, and she was terrified that wandering around aimlessly like this would. Out of nowhere, a loud rustling erupts from the nearby bushes. Ejin immediately raises her axe, bracing for a fight. She thinks a magic beast is about to jump out, but to her surprise, it's just a tiny, fluffy, white rabbit. She lets out a heavy sigh, trying to calm her racing heart after that sudden scare. But right when her guard is down, a real magic beast appears. A dark shadow panther leaps from the thicket, its jaws wide open, ready to tear her to shreds. Fortunately, Hugh notices just in time and delivers a devastating sledgehammer-like kick right into its belly. The panther collapses instantly, writhing in pain and unable to move. This dark creature is known as a shadow panther. They are only bred by the demon race, usually serving as simple bait. And right as it falls, the rest of the pack starts emerging from the shadows. The rumored werewolf has finally made his entrance. Standing over 2 meters tall and covered in thick fur, he growls, "You've got some decent skills. Why don't you join us? Once I rule this continent, I might just let you and that woman live." He's offering them a way out, but unfortunately for him, Hugh couldn't care less. He despises their attitude. And the werewolf's grand plan of dominating humanity? Hugh finds it absolutely laughable. Seeing Hugh's arrogant smirk, the werewolf loses his mind and stops talking. He orders the Shadow Panthers to charge. Seeing nothing but a massive payday right in front of her, Ijin grips her axe tight. Her previous fear completely vanishes as a surge of overwhelming magical power erupts from her entire body. With just a few swift swings of her axe, she can slice right through the entire pack. Watching his beloved pets drop like flies, the werewolf finally realizes he's been baited. These two were only playing weak and hiding their presence. They are nothing like the pathetic adventurers he slaughtered before. He roars in fury. So you were just putting on an act to lure me out this whole time? But Hugh rubs salt in the wound, casually replying that he was just playing along for fun. Taking this guy down doesn't just get him a cool 5 million reward, it's also his golden ticket to impress his future father-in-law. A sweet deal like this is just too good to pass up. The werewolf is absolutely turning red with rage. It's bad enough they're here to kill him, but treating it like some casual playtime? Talk about a total slap in the face. Most demons are all brawn and no brains. He lunges forward completely unguarded, and Hugh instantly reads him like an open book. A single kick to the gut sends the beast flying backward, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Hugh turns to Ajin and says, "Leave this one to me." He still has some questions to ask, so he'll handle this personally. As a proud member of the demon race who has slaughtered countless humans without a second thought, being treated like a total joke over and over is a bitter pill to swallow. Furious, the werewolf decides to go all out. His entire body is instantly enveloped in a thick shroud of demonic energy as his physical strength skyrockets. Hugh's expression turns cold as he demands, "Who taught you the shadow magic of the netherworld?" But the werewolf remains silent. After all, answering every question would completely destroy his pride. Fueled by pure, pent-up rage, he bares his claws and charges at Hugh. Unfortunately for him, picking a fight with Hugh today is his biggest mistake yet. Hugh effortlessly dodges every single strike, not even letting the beast graze his clothes. Hugh wants to find out who's pulling the strings, but this stubborn blockhead refuses to do things the easy way. Losing his patience, Hugh stops playing around and draws his emerald green sword. With a massive, overwhelming slash, he strikes his opponent down. The raw power of the blow is undeniable, sending a brilliant green light exploding through the sky. Even a massive stretch of the surrounding forest suffers from the devastating shockwave. Trees are flattened, crashing to the ground. Before the werewolf's shadow magic can even activate, it is completely blown away by the blast. Now, he can only fall to his knees, trembling like a beaten puppy instead of a wild wolf. Hugh stands before him, pointing his blade right at the creature's face. He asks point blank, "Do you want your pride, or do you want your life?" At this point, refusing to surrender means instant death. He confesses that the demon race, under the leadership of their emperor, is preparing to invade the human world once again. He was sent ahead as a scout to test the waters, fully believing that humans were still weak and pathetic. He planned to conquer this area and report back to the main army, never expecting to suffer such a humiliating defeat and end up on his knees. After their great war with humanity, a powerful figure had created a pocket dimension to shelter the surviving demons. This mysterious savior was a true hero to the entire demon race in their darkest hour. So, even if he's threatened with death, he refuses to reveal their identity. Hearing this, Hugh has a pretty good idea of who it might be. Creating a pocket realm to protect both demons and humans is just like Apostle Oman. With his supreme wisdom and countless skills, pulling off a feat like that would be a walk in the park. But there's still one thing Hugh doesn't get. Why on earth would the demons be unleashed to invade humanity all over again? As he tries to untangle this messy puzzle, he suddenly senses a shift in the air. Someone nearby has just opened a dimensional rift. That world is probably where the demons are hiding. But for some reason, the strange aura leaking out makes it feel as if absolutely nothing is inside. Huo walked up to the werewolf and asked him if it was true that to report the situation, they either had to open the realm gate or find a messenger who could transmit news between the two worlds. Seeing the demon obediently nod in agreement, he ordered him to lead the way to the messenger so he could pass a message to their emperor. But before they could meet the messenger, they had to pay a visit to Count Theodore. Relying on their map, the group followed a narrow trail. Along the way, the werewolf overheard their destination and told him that was exactly where the messenger was staying. Ijin looked visibly panicked, suspecting that if Isa was really there, the ring she gave them might actually be a cry for help. Huo nodded in agreement. Teasing her about her short legs, he scooped her up in his arms and dashed ahead at full speed. Before long, the tower loomed right before their eyes. Before they could even make a move, a blond man stepped out. He told them his master had anticipated their arrival and had specifically ordered him to welcome them. Night fell over the towering cliff, where massive waves crashed violently against the quiet expanse. The blond man spoke. "My lord would like to invite you inside to meet. Please, right this way." Ajin whispered, "Huo, do you think the messenger is setting a trap for us?" She and Huo then followed the man. He replied, "Hard to say, but we were planning to go in anyway. Let's head inside and see what they're plotting." She agreed, "Fair enough, let's go." Once they arrived, the man turned and said, "Right this way, please, my lord is waiting." Suddenly, Huo seemed to sense something and whipped around. Startled, Ajin asked, "What's wrong, Huo?" Huo instantly changed his tone, rubbing his forehead in frustration. "Nothing. Just got startled, is all." As the three of them kept walking, she just sighed, "What?" "And here I thought it was something important. I smell something a bit strange, but it's so faint, I can barely make it out." A long flight of stairs led them down to a hidden chamber. On the wall hung a portrait of a handsome man with long, shoulder-length blonde hair. Reaching the end, the guide announced, "My lord, the two guests have arrived." A voice echoed as the figure set down a teacup. "Very well. You may leave." The man obeyed. "Yes, my lord." As the silhouette of a woman came into view, she stood up and greeted them warmly. "Good evening, you two." The identity of the newcomer shocked both Huo and Ejin, making her gasp, "Isa," but the woman gently denied it. "No, I am Isa's mother. You may call me Lilith." Ejin's face finally relaxed. "Oh, so she really did get remarried, she didn't go missing." Lilith approached Huo and asked, "So you must be the one who stole my daughter's heart?" Completely ignoring her question, he shot back, "Where is Isa right now?" Instead of answering, she just chuckled and draped her arm over his shoulder. Pressing herself close to Huo, she whispered, "If you're planning to take my daughter away, I'm afraid that's a no-go. But if you want to have some fun tonight, I can keep you company." All the while, Lilith's hand was secretly casting a spell behind Huo's neck as she murmured, "I was thinking." However, within seconds, Huo saw right through her and grabbed her wrist in a tight grip. He said, "A succubus like you sure hunts far and wide." Ejin gasped in shock. "A succubus? Isn't she Isa's mother? Wait, is she the messenger?" "I am not the messenger." Unbothered by his resistance, Lilith smirked. "Still, I'm curious. How did you see through my charm, Huo?" Huo replied, "The moment we reached the city gates, you already knew and invited us inside. Only someone with immense magical power could sense that, a skill far beyond any ordinary mage." Lilith quickly defended herself. "Hey, I happen to be a very powerful mage." He pressed further. "Then explain how your appearance hasn't aged a single day in over 10 years? Humans are supposed to grow old, you know." Hearing this, she yanked her hand out of his grip. He continued, "And you trying to use charm magic just now only confirmed my suspicion." Amused by his logic, Lilith replied, "I see. Well, you're not wrong. I am indeed a succubus, but Isa really is my daughter. The only difference is that I am a pure-blooded succubus, while my daughter is a half-breed." She playfully teased Huo, treating it as a reward for his successful resistance to her charm. "My daughter, Isa, is in the last room on the second floor." Huo turned to Ajin and said, "Ajin, let's go." But she declined. "I'll just wait here. Right now, the person Isa wants to see most is you." "I'm not going in there to be a third wheel." Wanting to be absolutely sure, he asked again, "Are you sure you want to wait here?" Lilith reassured him, "Don't worry, I won't do anything to her." As the wall clock ticked away, she added, "Besides, it is getting very late. You should really go see her. She is about to fall asleep." Even though you had to leave, he was still worried about Ajin. He told him, "Be careful, okay? If anything happens, scream right away." Hearing this, she blushed, quickly shooing you away with a simple, "Yeah, I know. Just go." At that moment, Lilith's face showed an unexplainable sadness. Before he even showed his face, Yu's voice echoed, "Aisha, are you asleep yet?" He went upstairs, and seeing the door was already open, he pushed it open. Since the door was unlocked, he stepped inside to find a room overflowing with pink and cute girl stuff. His face instantly flushed red as he admired it in awe. Wow, is this really a young girl's room? He suddenly felt a rush of excitement, having no idea what was wrong with him. Before he could get too carried away, he spotted something on the desk. It looked like a single rose. Picking it up, he thought, before I left for the magic tournament, I gave Aisha this very flower. Suddenly, a door nearby swung open. Yu spun around in shock, only to see Aisha stepping out wearing nothing but a bath towel. Blushing red, Yu stammered, "Aisha, what are you doing here?" Flustered by this dreamlike situation, he frantically started making excuses. Aisha, let me explain. I just got here. I had no idea you were showering, and I definitely didn't get excited just by stepping into your room." Hearing this, a gentle smile appeared on her face. Suddenly, a voice spoke up, making Aisha gasp as her face darkened. "If our Lord finds out about this, he will be absolutely furious." Yu desperately tried to explain. "Right, I came with Ejin. He is downstairs. Should I call him up?" But Aisha coldly brushed him off, simply saying, "Just go home, both of you." She continued, "This is not a place you should be." Her distant attitude left him completely stunned. Aisha went on, "I only left that ring behind as a keepsake. I never expected you to come all this way because of it." He quickly replied, "But you vanished without a trace after leaving school. We've been so worried about you." Aisha clenched her fists tightly. "Vanished without a trace?" She thought to herself. "Please, just leave." Trying to lie to him, she said, "I'm about to marry a lord of high status. Obviously, I won't be hanging around you guys anymore. When that time comes, I'll be living in endless luxury." Deep down, she was terrified of what was to come, only wishing for him and Ejin to leave quickly before something terrible happened. But Yu only focused on the tears streaming down Aisha's face. Yu gently asked, "Then why are you crying?" Hearing this, she thought, "Am I crying?" I was trying so hard to hold it back. Yu had seen right through her lie, but he only sighed. He gently wiped away the tear, lingering on Aisha's cheek, softly advising her, "If you want to fool others, you have to fool yourself first." His gentle words highlighted his handsome face. "Your acting is terrible, my dear Aisha." Hearing this, Aisha blamed herself. "But it's all my fault. I shouldn't have let Ejin bring that ring to you. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have come here, and you wouldn't be in danger if that lord finds out." Hearing her mention him, Yu pondered to himself, "Is this Lord Aisha's talking about the one who stands above the Demon King and rules the demon race?" Aisha continued, You have no idea how terrifying he is. He is the true ruler of the demons. If we're caught, we are dead." With a panicked and worried look, she desperately tried to plead with You don't understand how terrifying that lord is. He is the actual ruler of the demon clan. If he finds out, there is no way out for us. Besides, I'm a succubus, and a succubus's instinct is to drain human life force. Blushing, she lowered her head and whispered, "Even though it only happens when we get intimate, but you didn't care about any of that." He just smiled gently and said, "Whether you're a succubus or a human, in my eyes, Aisha is just Aisha." His words made her blush, her heart skipping a beat. Finally, he reached out to hold her hand and added, "Forget about that lord for now. Aisha, do you want to leave this place with me?" She blushed, hesitating as she struggled to speak. "I." Suddenly, a loud chime echoed throughout the house as the clock struck 12. Downstairs with Ejin, Lilith gave a faint smile and muttered, "Is it 12 o'clock already?" Her smile made Ejin feel uneasy as he asked, "What?" The full moon shone brightly in the night sky as darkness completely enveloped the house. Aisha muttered, "It's already 12 o'clock. Time really flies." Yu playfully chimed in, "Well, time definitely flies when I'm with a beautiful girl like you, Aisha." She continued, "Turn around. I need to change. Hurry up. If we delay any longer, we'll all be in danger." He replied, "All right, I'm turning around." Hearing rustling behind him, he realized she was struggling with something and asked, "Aisha, what's wrong?" Focusing on changing, Aisha simply replied, "There's no time to explain. Just get ready for a fierce battle." A few seconds later, she said, "I'm done changing." Standing before him was a breathtaking Aisha, with long blue hair and a white dress, a perfect combination. Seeing how stunning she looked, Hugh couldn't help but gasp, "You look beautiful." But Asa didn't pay him any mind, simply saying, "Let's go." He quickly grabbed her hand to stop her, hesitating. "Wait." Hugh then slipped a gorgeous sky blue bracelet onto her wrist, saying, with a soft smile and blushing cheeks, he explained, "This jade bracelet I got at the auction is really helpful for ice magic. At the time, I thought it would definitely suit you." Accepting the gift, Asa gently touched the bracelet, Smiling, "Thank you, Hugh. I really love it," he chimed in. "Plus, a jade bracelet won't wither like that, Rose." Her cheeks and ears flushed bright red as she quickly changed the subject. "All right, let's go meet up with Edgy." But the moment they opened the door, they were startled by a bizarre, fog-filled space. "Where on earth are we?" Realizing what was happening, Asa spoke up. "This is my stepfather's labyrinth." Hugh thought to himself, which means it is based on his magical talent. An alternate world. Every time midnight strikes, he can replace the entire castle with the world he created deep in his heart. No wonder I couldn't detect any traces of a domain opening, even with the world shifting like this. Because from the very start, this labyrinth was already